Oh, hey, I guess we're live. Yeah, all right, let's do this, right? Just sit here and pick my nose looking at things. All right, hey, it's BC, it's Brian Campbell coming at you. I'm looking at you. You're looking right back at me. Let's get our stuff together. Hey, welcome to another Campbell's Rambles, and it's a big week, the biggest in a while in combat sports, for better or for worse across the board. Imagine if I was just like this or something. Instead, I was looking at some headlines there. What's going on? Hey, it's Wednesday, November 13th, 2024. Thank you for coming to this channel here, the old BCX, the Brian Campbell experience. And I don't need to tell you, fight fans, what's on my mind today, what's in the ethosphere, if you will. Will you? It's the big events going on this Friday and Saturday. Tyson Paul Friday night on Netflix. And of course, UFC 309 Saturday, NYC MSG. That used to mean something. Maybe it still does. Jon versus Stipe. We're going to find out something. We're going to find it out, though. So thank you for joining me. Thank you to Mikey for having my back as always. Look, the channel's coming along. It's the little engine that shouldn't or couldn't, but it is. All right. One step at a time, one click at a time. This week's highlights, if you missed it, check out my sit down with Stipe Miocic right now on the BCX. Also recorded a fantastic Inside the Box that you can catch tomorrow with a very, very, very salty Rafe Bartholomew, who ain't here for this Jake Paul business. Spoiler alert. So you can check that out as we recap the weekend that was. Look ahead, of course, to not just Mike Tyson, Jake Paul, but that Riyadh Season Latino Heat card they got going on there in Golden Boy. It's a good one on Saturday. Very deep card. So check that out over there. On Thursday, Chris Weidman, by the way, going to stop by this channel this week. So a couple of highlights to look forward to. And then obviously supporting the greater brands, the larger brands. Don't forget, Friday, MK, Morning Combat, 11 a.m. Eastern on the YouTubes, live and direct. Your boys BC and LT setting the stage for the weekend. Previews, predictions. I'm sure we're going to have a lot to say about Jon Jones, who just as we record this, got up from his chair at Media Day and did address the media and talked a lot about Stipe and Tom Aspinall and why Jon thinks the way that Boney thinks. All right. So, hey, the channel's coming along. We'll get there. You know, I said in the beginning, I don't know what it's going to be. You know what I mean? I mean, we're not going to be knocking on Luke Thomas territory anytime soon, but I like what we're doing here. I like the progress. I like what we're putting together. It still confounds me. I won't lie to you. I try not to play to the algorithm, whatever that means. I try to just play to the vibes, put out the content that hits me in the feel hole, but it's just weird. I'm telling you, there's content I've put out that I was assured would do gangbusters and it's done nothing. And then there's some other stuff that I'm like, oh, okay. People like that. Way to go. So thank you for checking out what you have. Like, subscribe, tell a friend, tell a couple friends. All right. Because I don't even know how you're going to advertise this channel. It's just like one guy in his basement talking in circles, but that's what we got going on. So thank you. Shout out to Boston Scally for this fantastic midlife crisis hat that I'm wearing here. Look at the patterns. It's just great. So check them out over there. And you can buy the Chuck Mindenhall hat, by the way, the man, the myth, over there at Boston Scally. Check them out. And how about this for new merch? No, not MK, not the BCX. Okay. I'm talking about my boy Luke Nocita. I'm talking about Long Island Luke in the main card minute. Some cold ones are about to be drinking and with this thing right here. So go on over to his new website, themaincardminute.com, and you can be wearing this here merch. I think we have some of the same fans that viewers, regulars, if you will. I try to think of the BCX as like your local bar. You know what I mean? Like sometimes people come here for a drink, they go over to Luke Nocita's. Hey, some people hit up Luke Thomas on Thursday and talk about Gaza and stuff. So be there, be square, MK 11 a.m. on Friday, all that good stuff. I don't think I have anything else to sell you. I don't have merch, but one day, Reggie Jackson will have his day. I think it's too light. It's got too many lights on here. All right. So let's get to it. I will be taking your questions, by the way, and Fuzzy Dunlop. Yeah, shout out to that big salami main card minute there. I agree with you. I will be taking your questions in a bit after I get through some big topics here, and the super chat is on. So thank you to everybody, by the way, for you don't have to put the dollars down or the or the loonies or shekels, or I don't know, what are we paying with around the globe these days? You don't have to do that. You can get your question in anyway. But for those that get my back, I do appreciate you on here and all that stuff. All that and then some, tall, pale, and handsome. It is a 46-year-old washed dad looking at you. And one day you'll be looking at me wearing a Reggie Jackson Mr. October shirt. All right. That's what I'm going on. All right. What am I getting into to kick off the show? I'm sure you can guess it because it's the biggest combat sports week in a long time. And for as much as I tend to get upset when big time events are on the same night, and this is not the case. We have a Friday-Saturday effect here. I don't know. I was extra sour of late. I think I dipped into a sour stretch. Maybe it's the incoming winter. You know, I'm a seasonal depression guy. Maybe it's the, I don't know, you know, the clocks change. It's dark. Maybe it's some of that, but I kind of like, you know, I don't even know if I want any of these two events, let alone having them on the same weekend. I've come around, though. Some of that was the saltiness of the John Tom situation. Some of that is the ongoing, what does my brain do with the fact that I want to see 58-year-old Mike Tyson knock out Jake Paul, like I'm sure a lot of people do. I also don't want to see Iron Mike carried out. I also don't want to see a hug pro wrestling fest, right? I don't want to see Chael Sonnen versus Anderson Silva in a boxing ring. Did anybody else watch that? Wow. But there's some good fights this weekend underneath some of these main events too. I mean, it's Taylor Serrano 2 week. Like that's real. Like if we're really being honest, that might be the best fight of the week. That might be the best thing going on. Don't tell Rafe Bartholomew that. Don't do that. Don't do that. No. But let's get into it off the top. Let's start with UFC 309. And of course, you know, I'm here to talk about Jon Jones. I thought it was very interesting how much Jon took personal. Stipe calling him a bitch twice on the countdown show, even though it seemed to be so like planted. Like I can imagine the producer saying, hey, Stipe, we didn't necessarily understand what you just said, but if you could say it slower and maybe tack on biatch at the end, that'd be great. And, you know, for Stipe's credit, he probably listened to them. And, you know, Stipe's not a great interview. I had him on this week. Check it out for yourself. I tried to commit dental surgery, though, and pull something out of him. Did I fail? That's going to be up to you to check out. But I do like that even Stipe seems to be back. Not that I intend this chat, this ramble, to be an anti-Jones fest. It's not my intentions. There is a part of me that's just really excited to see Jon Jones fight this weekend. I hope that's the same for all of you. I don't subscribe to that narrative that says, you shouldn't criticize that guy, blah, blah, blah. You should just be happy that he's here. Not necessarily that. But through all his ups and downs, like seeing Jon Jones compete is one of the better parts of my fandom and journalism career over these years. So I'm excited to see him back, especially at heavyweight where we have that much footage of him at. But it was funny to see Stipe almost jump in on the side of sort of this anti-Jon brigade based on the comments Jon is saying about where he's at in his career and what he's trying to accomplish next, and just dropping multiple doogies unnecessarily on Tom Aspinall. To see Stipe react to today at Media Day to how mad Jon has been getting. Jon posted videos on social media going, Stipe, you're calling me a bitch? You're going to pay for that. And seeing Stipe almost call him in return, you know, sensitive. It was kind of funny because Stipe, who was eating during Media Day, because he's Stipe, he's like, whatever, you know, I got a couple minutes before we got to run up and down the ladder and, you know, check the air in the tires at the firehouse. So I guess I'll be here. Obviously, Stipe was in New York for this. And by the way, did you see that behind the scenes video that TNT Sports put out where Aspinall, the backup for this main event, is just like purposely lingering around while Stipe's checking out the gloves and all that? I like that. I don't think Tom has done enough personally to take that like aggressive anti-stance against both guys and come out more and be more like, no, I'm the man. I'm next. You ain't going nowhere. You're not going to retirement. You're fighting me. I'd like to see a little bit more of that. But back to Jon and Stipe. I like to see Stipe sort of have that snarky responses, be like, what the hell is Jon talking about? Like, oh, what he's going to do? Beat me up? Isn't that what we're doing here? Isn't that what we have a fight coming up? So that's kind of interesting. But Jon just took to Media Day. Oscar Willis, you know, all the regular blokes who are there on the front lines asked him the right questions, I thought, to sort of get his opinion on a more clarification of his recent Aspinall comments. And I think Jon's just giving us, as much as Jon is trying to justify his stance, and it's not that I don't think there's any justification in his stance. Look, he's the greatest fighter of all time. I'm not fighting that. You know what I mean? It's just that, like, hey, Jon, you going up to heavyweight to one day eventually fight for a heavyweight title and cement the idea that you're the greatest fighter we've ever seen. Not I think you're the greatest, but that guy thinks it's GSP. That guy thinks it's Anderson. That lady down there thinks it's Fedor, right? No, nothing like that. Or Mighty Mouse or whoever you have in there. This idea that once he goes up to heavyweight and does the thing, I remember talking about that in 2010, 2011, 2012, when I'm the backup MMA editor at ESPN. It was like, we've all just been waiting for this moment. Well, we got the moment, but the circumstances that played into it, they just make it hard to support Jon. And then when Jon is saying the things he is and justifying the things he's saying by doubling and tripling down, it's making this experience of what we actually want to do, which is whether we like him or don't like him. I think we all want to praise Jon when he wins because he is the greatest fighter we've ever seen. There is something to the idea, whether you're a fan or journalist, in an era of saying to yourself, if we have somebody that could be our Tiger Woods, that could be the greatest of all time, that could be the dominant one of this era, it's the same sort of frustration at times I would have with Floyd Mayweather when he was still fighting and carefully choosing his opponents. It's this idea that, like, I'm not trying to run you into a loss in my fandom by complaining about who you're fighting or how you're framing this. I want you to fight the very best to prove to everybody and me that I already believe that you're the very best. And I want you to clean out every name possible, walk away on top so that we can all be like, I lived in the Jon Jones era. I breathed in this. I ate in this era. I saw it firsthand. I was there cage side. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what we really want. It's not about trying to find new ways to dunk on Jon. But Jon, when you come to the heavyweight division in the manner that you did, kind of running away from light heavyweight, for all the stuff Jon is saying negative about, Tom is just another Dominic Reyes, as he pronounces it, or just another surreal gain, as he pronounces it. It's sort of, his way of saying, well, Tom Aspinall is just a Johnny come lately. And, he's compared him to potentially to Anthony Smith, all these people. But it's like that guy you just made fun of, Dom Reyes, who was, hot for a second and wasn't, which is the comparison he's trying to make as to why he doesn't need to fight Tom. That guy kind of beat you straight up. We scored it for Dom. A lot of us did. I'm not like upset that Dom didn't get an immediate rematch or that Jon got his hand raised. There's close decisions all the time. But Jon kind of ran away from that division because it was catching up to him. He settles for a split decision over Maheta, who's standing on 2 damaged legs. And Jon sort of was like, okay to let that go to the scorecards and not look to really push that action. Then you got that close fight with Reyes, and then he disappears and he wants more big money. It is his right to want more big money, by the way. He's the greatest fighter of all time. That's why I'm saying UFC should almost bail Jon out right now by pulling him aside in a side room and saying, Jon, all this talk you're doing, you're burying yourself. It's making people like dunk on you even more. Like, we'll pay you to fight Aspinall. So stop saying you might not. It's probably not what's really going on, but it's this whole idea that, like, Jon, you kind of ran away from light heavyweight, then sat out 3 full years simultaneously as Francis Ngannou becomes the guy and the dude and absolutely destroys Stipe Miocic in their rematch to win the belt. And then it's the convenience of once Francis leaves, suddenly Jon is back. I don't think it's that easy where, like, you can frame it as Jon Jones was sitting around waiting for Francis to leave, and then the second he left, he stood up and said, I'm ready to fight now. I think he was already ready to come back. I think he would have fought Francis, just like I think Francis would have fought him if the terms were what they wanted, right? Jon just seemed to want a lot of money. Francis obviously wanted things that the UFC was never going to give him. So it's not the end of the world that Jon comes back as Francis leaves, and it's not Jon's fault that Cyril Gane crapped the bet against him and then that Jon would suffer that injury. But you have to take that all into account, in my opinion, if you're Jon, when fielding the criticism of everybody and actually take stock of what the pulse of really what is happening is. Because all the rhetoric from Jon, it's just not making him look good. This isn't boxing. We can make Floyd Mayweather comparisons here. Jon is trying to carefully, and Luke did that on Monday's MK. But, like, the difference is Floyd had that control and ability to fight legitimately who he wanted, when he wanted, and the timing and all of that. You don't get that luxury in the UFC. It just so happens, probably for business purposes, that the UFC is enabling Jon to go down this road, say these things, and frame these false narratives because they just really want this fight. They felt like they needed something major at MSG so they can put kind of a crappy undercard under it. And it is a crappy undercard under it. I hate to say that, but it's true. I hate to say that about New York City, which from the beginning, when they finally got back there in 2016, when the laws changed and those first couple cards, they were deep as heck and amazing. I mean, 205 and 217, outside of the life-changing experience I had at UFC 236 in Atlanta, being there for Poirier, Holloway 2, and of course Gastelum Adesanya, I don't know if I've been at better combat sports events than 205 and 217. The depth, the energy in the arena, the, just the everything. I know it was a different time and whatever, but UFC enabled this by keeping to that we must do this Jon Stipe thing no matter what, making this idea that the fans seem to actually want it when they don't. It's not that they hate it. It's, like I always say, I was for it last year. I thought last year was a little gratuitous to roll that out, but I was for it because it was history. It was grand. It was two of the greatest of all time, the greatest fighter against the greatest heavyweight. Right? And I don't even know if Stipe is really the greatest heavyweight. And this isn't to rip on Stipe. I get why he's called that, because he has a heavyweight record, 4 defenses over 2 reigns, and obviously to come back after being knocked out by DC and then beat him twice. It's like, dude, what am I going to say negative about Stipe? But I still do believe, by the way, even though his run didn't go the way it was supposed to, that Cain Velasquez is the greatest heavyweight I've ever seen in the UFC. I still believe that Fedor is the greatest heavyweight of all time. And I still believe that you got to at least consider Francis because of what he did to Miocic in that rematch. Obviously, Francis doesn't have the length of the resume and the length of the names, but it's sort of weird to just automatically call Stipe that, but that's fine. It's the GOAT against the heavyweight GOAT. It sells itself. A year later, does it sell itself? Well, no. You're seeing a lot of people grown. So to see Jon do the same routine that he did today, that he's done lately, and all the interviews, and it seems like he's done a very hand-picked amount of interviews, which, again, when you're at that level of star and you've been gone for, this is only Jon's second fight in basically 5 years, it's not uncommon to get the Rousey effect where you can kind of handpick who you talk to and who you don't. I wasn't surprised that Jon didn't sit down per se with Brett Okamoto at ESPN and instead did it with Stan Verrett of SportsCenter. I wasn't surprised that he talked to Ioli and broadcast partners like Bronstetter and all that. But I'm very glad at least that Jon sat down for media day today and the right people got to kind of press him a little bit. But to hear Jon say, I'm not ducking Tom Aspinall. If I failed to fight Stipe, I would be ducking Stipe because contractually we signed up for it over a year ago. Yeah, well, Jon, things have changed over the year, right? When you couldn't make that fight because of injury, Tom Aspinall steps in. And what has he done for all the stuff Jon says negative about? What has Tom accomplished? Here's what Tom has actually accomplished, Jon. Outside of losing a full year due to a disastrous injury that he came back from in speedy recovery time and then went right back to doing what he's doing, which is literally knocking out everyone they put in front of him in like almost Shane Carwin time, right? Just that quick, he's going to get you out of there. Well, the most important thing Tom has actually accomplished, Jon, while you've been away injured, is clean out the top end of the division below you one by one of the kind of contenders who would have been next in line for Jon had Jon not gotten injured, right? Jon would have fought Stipe last year, and who would he be fighting next? It still could have been Sergey Pavlik. It still could have been Curtis Blades for all we know. You know what I'm saying? Jon is just following the Bisping playbook to some degree, but that was also UFC really wanting that Bisping-Hendo rematch. They wanted to put a big fight in a European market. Bisping suddenly the champion. That's the fight to do. It's similar to Stipe, Jon. The difference is you're not holding up the division for a long-ass time while you're waiting on that. But for Jon to say that Tom hasn't accomplished anything, A, it's not true, and B, Jon, you wouldn't have accomplished anything if Legends didn't give you the chance at the time, right? If you think Shogun's going to be like, well, I've had a great career through Pride, and I'm the UFC middleweight champion in 2011, but, this young guy, all he's ever beat is like Jake O'Brien and Stephan Bonner. I ain't going to fight him. No. Shogun's a absolute badass who said, yeah, I'll fight him. Fight him on short notice, like whatever. And Shogun took one of the biggest beatings in a title fight in a one-sided mop-up that we've ever seen. Credit to Jon. But Jon doesn't have that incredible 2011 with 4 or 5 wins, and that 2012 where he just goes from like, maybe this guy is the great one. You know what I mean? Maybe this guy is the one that can be the greatest of all time. People were saying that, by the way, before he won the title. I remember that. I remember being at ESPN and the hardcore MMA guys going, did you see him beat Stephan Bonner, man? This guy might be the goods, right? But you have to see it for yourself. Jon, those guys gave you the opportunity. They gave you the opportunity when you were arguably less accomplished than Tom Aspinall is right now, having walked through the guys that he did and the ease that he's done it, even with that injury that kept him out for a year. So it's a lot of BS to hear Jon doubling down and saying the Tom narrative came out of nowhere and he won a belt and suddenly I'm ducking him. Jon said the fans are just ignoring all logic and have finally found someone who compete with me and everyone now wants to see it, says Jon, end quote. Jon, we didn't find somebody who can just compete with you. Like, again, Jon, you're the greatest of all time. I never not said that. In fact, I was saying that like way before anybody else. I was saying that back in 2011 that you're going to move up to heavyweight. And I remember saying back then that he may never lose when he goes to heavyweight, because I did feel the difference in skill and speed between the elite light heavyweights back then and everyone but the one or two top heavyweights was like night and day. But for Jon to just go down this road and double and triple down and say that fans are creating this, these narratives that aren't true and saying, Tom does nothing for me. He does nothing for me. Well, then give up the title. And I know to some degree that is what Jon's now saying. I did see an interview with him last week where he basically said, I just want to fight Alex Pereira and I don't even need the title to be on the line. In fact, you can put the BMF title, Jon said, and it's just two badass guys getting together. And it's like, okay, if you do want to fight Pereira, maybe that's the way to go. Because as much as I want to see Jones Pereira because it's so sexy from the potential idea of giving Alex a chance to become the first 3-division champion, and who else outside of Conor when he was at his peak? Remember, he got in the face of Tyron Woodley at UFC 205 backstage, right? Outside of like maybe that, or maybe the time Cejudo was throwing out, moving up to Volkanovski, but he didn't have as much pull. It's like, I want to see that, but I don't want to see that holding up Tom, who's just constantly being forced to wait. So it's like, Jon, I actually would respect you a lot more. And it doesn't really matter at the end what he says or how he frames it or how I react to it. Who cares? They're going to fight on Saturday. We're going to watch it. We're going to react to it. Everything's great. But it's the same thing I say about promoters. Like, they're all used car salesmen. They all are. Some you like better. Some I like Eddie Hearn, right? He speaks, he's charming. He wears the waistcoat. He's got the accent. He's younger than the other crooks. And it makes it seem like he's speaking directly to me, even though I know he's a promoter and he's screwing us. It's kind of like that. Like, I don't expect those guys to be fully truthful, but there's times when you just have to give up the gig and be fully honest. What I can't really figure out is what is Jon's true motivation / fear here. We talked about this on Monday's MK. I'm not saying he's afraid to physically fight that guy, but if you really take into totality all of his comments today saying, oh, you guys just want me to fight Tom because finally we found somebody who's younger and heavier than me and may give me a chance, may have a chance to compete with me. Jon, you're the GOAT. You're the greatest. But it's not like you ran through everybody untouched to get here. In the beginning, it was insane. Shogun, Machida outside of that big left hand, Machida landed in round 2, right? The Rashad fight was a little bit closer. Rampage of destruction. Like, that was destructive Jon. But he got older. He had a lot of issues outside the cage, and the division caught up with him. So to say that we finally found somebody, i.e. Aspinall, who actually does have a chance to compete with Jon, it's like, Jon, did you not rewatch the Reyes and Maheda fights when those two were like kind of that close to beating you? So it's like, you're just digging yourself a hole here, Jon. I would rather you be a lot more honest. You can unblock me or keep me blocked on Instagram. That's not part of this discussion. But I'd rather you just come out and say this. This is where Jon could have gotten it right. If he just came out and basically said, guys, I'm getting older. Just coming off major surgery, injury that set me back. We already had this fight with Stipe. I want to go out on my own terms. I want to fight in Madison Square Garden. I'm a New York guy. I'm happy that Dana's supporting me and that he held this fight for me. So you know what? There's a new generation coming. But he could have pulled the Canelo here. He could have said, look, there's a new generation coming, but if I go beat Tom Aspinall, you're just going to create another list of 5 or 6 guys. If Jon just said, look, let's end the debate now. I'm retiring after this fight. I want Stipe. It's a historic fight. It's a bookend fight. Let's get it done. We'll get out of there. Would we be happy about it? No, we wouldn't be throwing out ducking and really make this a war between media and fighter, like it kind of media or fan and fighter, like it's kind of becoming. That would be a little bit more honest. But I don't think he's saying that because I don't think it's the truth. Because if you listen to Jon long enough, I think it does come down to those comments he said about the ease. If he beats Stipe with ease, like a lot of us think he will, like the odds makers think he will, I do think the ego in Jon, who's very happy that his career is finally like fully back together. I mean, do you see how happy he was in the interviews this week talking about the reception that he's getting? Not just the reception from Dana, who's going out of his way to fillet him. And again, I think that's the move for Dana. Keep Jon as happy as friggin' possible so he'll sign that contract to fight the next big fight they want. But Jon seems to really be in love with the idea that outside of this narrative from fans and media that he's ducking Tom, he's getting a lot of love finally. He's getting people bowing down to the GOAT. And by the way, Jon, you deserve that. So I wonder if it does come down to the ease, if he potentially beats Miocic, if that decides it. But I think if I take his comments in whole from all the interviews I've watched, which is basically every one, I don't think Jon wants to leave. That's why he's bringing up Pereira. I think he wants to make stupid money, be in really big fights where he can kind of lean on that star power in ways that it rarely happens in UFC, right? Where fighters can kind of call their shots, but it does when you've got, potential, when you got money in the bank with the promotion. And they need Jon right now. They need him for this event. They need him to a certain degree, right? He brings back the casual fans. That's why they were fighting Stipe here. That's why they didn't say, hey, sorry, Stipe, you got to fight Tom while Jon's out for a year. Because this is the new model under, TKO Endeavor. This is, they're going to kind of strip it down, but they're going to put out that big event. They got their big event here. But I think Jon does want to continue fighting. So if I do believe Jon wants to continue fighting, which I do, I'm taking him at his words, then everything he's saying about Aspinall is 100%. I hate to say it, but it's a duck. It's a really bad duck because of the respect I have for who Jon is, not the respect of like his true character. I mean, I don't hold it against him as much as everyone else at times. It's a ridiculous run that he's had outside of the cage, and it's not like it's fully resolved or gone. I mean, he's still kind of that guy, but I'm a sucker for greatness like anybody else. I'm a sucker for greatness. That's why I would actually respect him more. Like I said, if he just declared that I am retiring no matter what, let's end this debate. I'm fighting Stipe because he's a legend. I'm a legend. I'm going to go out as a legend, as the greatest of all time. We might actually come around to that to some degree and be like, okay, he's drawing the line here. It's not that Tom's so great. It's just that Tom is the other generation. Jon is this generation exiting, and he wants to bring Stipe with him because they're in the same generation and they're going to fight. No problem with that. It wouldn't be like this negative stain on his resume. But it's the fact that he seems to clearly want to keep fighting. He seems to want to be in a super fight with Pereira. He seems to want to, I'm sure, take the magic of my heart and put it in a big-ass stadium. It's a duck. It is what it is, okay? Hori Chu knows that, all right? He knows that, right? JP34, he's on top of that, okay? Two Changs knows the score right now. Jon, you're killing us. Like, I can separate the art from the artist. I'm not holding it against Jon, the bad things that he's done to himself and his family. I'm not holding it against him, despite what it sounds that he blocked me on Instagram. Like, I've had a lot of time with Jon. That stretch at ESPN when I was the MMA editor, Brett was the writer, and Jon declared during that stretch that he wasn't going to talk to Brett ever again based on something he said. Like, I was the one who would sit with Jon after the big arrest when he'd come through in a car wash in ESPN and, pick his brain and fall for his shtick about redemption and turning his life around and all that. I want to see greatness. I want to see great fighters complete that. Actually, the hardest part about this stretch has been like, I felt that Jon would beat everybody at heavyweight at the end of the day. And I wanted to see it, but now we're not going to see it. We're not going to see Ngannou. If you take Jon at his word, we're not going to see Aspinall. Maybe this is still just a public negotiation thing. But Jon, I think you're doing worse damage to your image by the way you're handling it than if you just go sit down with the UFC right now and basically be like, what's your number? What's your damn number? Now, maybe they won't tell him because, he's got to beat Stipe first. And what happens if Stipe upsets that apple cart? What happens? It's wild. It's wild. It'd be good for Stipe because, like, no one holds anything against Stipe. Yeah, he mumbles. He's not overly exciting as a person, but as a fighter, man, he does have, like, in reality, he should be all of our favorite fighter because there is that blue collar, like Randy Couture, Captain America vibe to a degree with him. To see him do the things he did in 2 and 3 against Cormier, you know what I mean? To see the way that he may have tapped against Alistair. You know what I mean? There was a whole website, but remember that Stipe tapped website and Twitter account? I was kind of down for that, dude. That was a fun bit. All right. That was absolutely a fun bit. So get some of that. Thank you very much, Michael Lobo. Jon's killing me, but that's why. But yeah, some of these Jon quotes, to close it off here, here's what Jon said. He said, business-wise, it makes more sense. Pereira. He says, should I fight the nobody, meaning Aspinall, that may be more dangerous, or fight the guy, Pereira, with all the accolades who is incredibly dangerous, but it will actually affect your legacy? Me beating Cyril Gahn, Jon said, didn't do anything for me. It just gave me a few more millions. It would be the same for Tom. When you look back and it's Jon just beat Alex Pereira, it would be bigger. It would just be bigger. And anybody who can't understand that logic, Jones closed, simply doesn't want to. No, I understand it, Jon. I think you don't understand it, all right? Like, I don't hate the intent. You know what I'm saying? I don't hate this Pereira fight. It is Jon looking down for a potentially easier fight. The way that he justifies it is saying, well, Pereira's the same age as me. We're relatively the same size. But obviously, like, the thing is, Jon, if you had stayed healthy, not your fault, and beaten Stipe last fall, and if you basically got on the microphone and was like, you know, because remember, Tom Aspinall only won the interim title because Jon couldn't fight last November. So if they were instead basically like, hey, Tom, I know you're next. This is Jon, right? If Jon was like, hey, Tom, I know you're next, but I just beat the crap out of Stipe, and I only have one left, and I'm telling you what, it's going to be Pereira. We would have been down for that. But, Jon, you can't have your cake, eat it too, smear it on the screen, dance in front of it. Anyone see this bit, Conor McGregor, and some dude DM'd me. And he's like, yo, I live in Northern Ireland right near Conor McGregor's vacation home. And people just ran in his backyard and caught him and his wife on tape. I'm like, Conor's got a lot going on. Please don't show me these videos or this get out of control. But, you know, I don't know how we got there through talking about Jon. But, Jon, it's like, I understand the logic, dude. But the things have changed because you got hurt. So go in there, fight Stipe, and then you got a choice. You can retire. Some might say you're ducking. But you know what? If it's a honest victory, like he's got to get a little pushback from Stipe. It can't be the Gone fight all over again. But if he goes in there, especially if it's an action fight or it's a hard fight and he wins it, and then he says, "I've made the decision," he puts the gloves down. There's only so much you can hate on that. But if he wins, doesn't retire, and then tries to only make it about Pereira, as much as I want that fight, you can't tell us. Aspinall's not going to wait again. You might be able to fight Pereira, but it might have to be for the 205 title, Jon. No, Jon's never cutting down. I don't think he should. He spent all that time building his body. And, the closer I get, I got to give Jon credit. Bringing in Gable Stevenson for wrestling and bringing in Gordon Ryan for jiu-jitsu. Like, I do think Jon's going to be awesome in this fight. Karma-wise, he probably, in a weird way, deserves to get stopped by Stipe just for all these circular tracks and trails he's been narrating here. But I think he'll get it done. I'm coming around on actually being excited to see it. A lot of ways, a lot of reasons because of this BS that we're talking about. But I do love seeing Jon Jones compete. Love him or hate him. He's the best we've ever seen. I want to keep seeing it. I think he wants to keep seeing it too. I just hope he doesn't get too caught up in this, I got to protect this O. He's already too caught up in it. So I guess that's it. End of the discussion. Let's go to the next topic before we get to your questions. All right. Like, Jon's got too much dog in him to be a duck right now. Jon, you're killing me. Do you remember how you fought against Gustafsson in that first fight when you're blowing coke that week? I mean, like, you're an American hero in some ways. Maybe not in Albuquerque in that intersection with that pregnant lady, but I mean, what is he going to do? Block me on Twitter now too? Okay, let's get into the second topic. That's Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul this weekend, Friday night. I got to give Netflix credit. I watched the Countdown series, or I'm almost all the way through it. It's pretty damn good because think about what they're trying to do. They're really reaching to the casual audience. So the way that they intersperse modern Tyson with showing the incredible backstory. And by the way, I got a lot of really good content. I don't know if people read the written word anymore, but if you go to cbssports.com, go to the boxing page. I got 5 storylines of why Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson matter. I've got, hey, if you think Tyson's going to win, here's 5 reasons why he might. And I just put out a column about sort of the ridiculousness of Tyson's career arc and life arc. And the whole idea that, like, as crazy as this fight is, we actually shouldn't be surprised if we listen to Mike's words and follow him closely, which a lot of us have. I don't even know what it's like, by the way, to not have followed Mike as intimately as people my age have. Meaning, when he won the heavyweight title at 20 years old, was I watching boxing day to day? No. But when Tyson did that, it was a thing. I remember being at my grandparents' house in Pennsylvania. My mom's father was a boxing fan, so it was the only sport we could watch in his house. And I remember playing with toys on the floor, and my dad, not a sports fan, but could get into boxing, was sitting there with him. And it was an HBO card where Tyson had an early fight on it. I think Holyfield had an early fight on it. And there was like, early talk. These guys may fight one day. So I knew who Tyson was. And then he becomes the biggest star in not just sports in the 80s, but like, us who lived it know, like bigger than Jordan and Bo Jackson, bigger than sports, the biggest pop culture icon. And to think about those years, it's not just the destruction in the ring and the whole baddest man on the planet thing. His life was a full on reality show before that genre even, like, I have almost as, I don't want to say good memories because it wasn't a good memory, but those that know, that watched Barbara Walters sit down in Tyson's living room with him and his wife, Robin Givens, while he was like high on all these pills to calm him down. And Robin just undressed him in front of America and talked about him hitting her and all this stuff. And like, that's almost as memorable as the fights back then. Like, you know, don't forget Tyson tried to kill himself in 88 and ran the car into a tree, you know, after trouble with Givens, you know, and Customato had died, and then Jimmy Jacobs died and Don King took over. We remember it all. We remember the rise and the fall of Buster Douglas, the rape conviction in prison, the comeback with Don King, and you know, winning titles, and then having the 2-fight series with Holyfield, and then what became of the tail end of Mike's career, which was just like, he's a pay-per-view fighter, but we're literally buying the pay-per-views in the hope that he has a meltdown in the ring. And it wasn't just like once. Oh, didn't he bite Holyfield's ear once? No, he tried to break that dude's arm. Remember that time? You know that dude, that white guy from South Africa? What was that guy's name? The wolf? I forgot it. You know who I'm talking about. So I can't even imagine what it would be like to be 30 years old, 25 years old, and somebody goes, "Oh yeah, Mike Tyson." You're like, "Oh yeah, wasn't he that guy with that video game? And he was a good boxer. And oh, I loved him in The Hangover." And you know, I mean, like, because it's so, the twists and turns of Mike's life are just ridiculous. But there's the central the White Rhino. Yes, thank you, Colin Robinson, my man. Okay, this is people getting my back live. This is not a chat or a ramble. We're at the same bar. Welcome to the BCX bar. All right. I'm your bartender. I'm just going to talk in circles, and sometimes you guys can correct me. Thank you, Colin Robinson. So let's talk about our brains and how we're going to digest this fight. It's really a competition of both sides of the brain, because there's the one side of you that's like, this is ridiculous. This is a 58-year-old man. It's a guy I love. Like, the fact that Mike Tyson's like relatively happy at this point in his life. Do you remember Mike after 2005, after he retired, and retired in the most shameful way possible when he got dropped by Kevin McBride, the journeyman, and refused to sit up, like sitting on his butt, leaning against the ropes. And he's just like, and it wasn't even a cool no mas like Morales gave to Pacquiao in the third fight. It was like, I'm done. The ensuing years were awful to watch from a distance. So it's like, there's this one half of your brain that wants to, you know, it is. To quote, have you seen this, S swell guy? All right. It is elder abuse. There's that part of your brain that wants to protect Mike. And in that same half of the brain, you want to protect boxing to some degree. If you're a hardcore like me, if it's been injected and you can't get it out, you're like, this might be pro wrestling, and I don't want anything to do with Chael Sonnen versus Anderson Silva in a boxing ring. There's that part of you. There's the idea that, you know, the jokes just keep flying. Peter Davis, thank you for being a fan of Inside the Box. You know, that great reference from Nassim Hamed. So there's that half of you that's like, I don't want to be an accomplice in this. There's that half of you that's like, what's going to happen? Most likely, Jake's going to stop him in some degree. It could be vicious and really bad. It could be where the first time Mike's in any form of peril, it gets stopped because maybe the referees and the people involved remember when Evander Holyfield at 58 got beat up for 2 minutes by Vitor Belfort and just couldn't even stand. That's that half of your brain that's like, no, I've watched Mayweather McGregor, right? Like, let's be fair. Us boxing guys, we all knew from the beginning what Mayweather McGregor was and what it would end up looking like and what it would end up being. We were for it to some degree because of the business aspects, because it's just like, it's just so weird and unique that it's the perfect storm. And we wanted to talk ourselves into the idea that McGregor's magic mixed with the idea that Floyd was 40 and 2 years removed and coming back, that it could maybe make this a wild fight. What if Conor hit him flush? What if he knocked him down? What if he knocked him out? Like, there's that side of your brain that was fighting aggressively. But for most of us boxing guys, except for Brendan Schaub, who was really trying to push McGregor winning, it was like, okay, what are we talking about here? What are we really talking about here? This is theater, and that's fine. And I think the further we get away from that fight, I think the more we do debate and throw around, like, was it actually really theater or just Floyd carrying Conor? One out of like, okay, if he is dangerous, then let him get it all out in the first couple rounds. And then the other part of like, well, I don't want to knock him out in the first round. And then everybody go like, wow, I'm glad I paid $100 for that BS. So there's that side of my brain that's like, this is bad for the sport. It could be pro wrestling. We don't want to see it. But the other half of your brain, part of that half wants to fall for it, because that half is the creative, fun pro wrestling side of our fight brains. Whether we, declare as a pro wrestling fan or a lapsed fan, or we try to Luke Thomas our way through saying, I'll never watch guys in tights, do this, like what Bob Arum said about MMA, right? He told Ariel that time, it's, bunch of skinhead whites, right? Rolling around with other skinhead whites. But this half of the brain is like, Tyson could win this. I mean, he really actually could. It's so stupid, though. And the 14-ounce gloves, which are designed to protect Tyson, as is the 2-minute rounds, over 8 rounds, I wonder if that's going to, mute and dilute whatever power he actually does bring to the table. But, this isn't just like the Conor fight where casuals and MMA fans and people that have always hated Floyd are like, yeah, this might be the guy that can do it. I can't wait to buy this and tune in. We're all paying $100 each. Who cares? We got to see it. There definitely was a lot of people that thought Conor could win, but I think there's way more people that believe Tyson can win. Like a lot of people in boxing that believe, like all the old fighters, like, oh yeah, he'll knock because people don't respect Jake Paul, and I get that. Watch Inside the Box tomorrow. Rafe Bartholomew does not respect Jake Paul. It was a little aggressive. I love that guy. But it's like, the odds are telling you that he has a decent chance. I cannot believe, even though the odds are set that way to induce betting, and I see like some of these betting sites are saying like they expect this to be the most bet on fight of all time. It's wild. Seeing though Mike as like a plus 210, 230, seeing Jake Paul as only minus, 2.5, and seeing Mike as like plus 150, 160, like that's wild to me. That's really, 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 really wild to me. What do we got sliding in here, John? Thank you for the support right here. You'll be hosting and catering a party from Cumberland Farm. Badass move there, dude. Well done. Get the rollers. Get what's going on there. Gas stations, by the way, are the silent killers. Yeah, I mean, look, that's that. Colin, I get that. Colin's saying that there's no need to script the fight. It should be an easy win for Jake. So it should be. And that's part of my brain that's like, dude, I know this sport. 58-year-old Mike can't do this. And even though I do bring up a lot the 2020 exhibition with Roy Jones, where Mike like totally exceeded our expectations. He boxed really good for 8 rounds, and he was quick late. He had stamina. Yes, there was a lot of holding in that fight, but to see Roy in the interviews now that he's doing, I think he just did one with All the Smoke, and he's like, oh yeah, Tyson hit stupidly hard. He's like, he hit me in the chest in the first round, and I felt like I was kicked by an animal. And he also said that Tyson's defense was way better than it should have been. And it kind of makes sense if you consider the custom model taught bob and weave style is, and they talk about this in the Countdown show on Netflix. It is so designed that you can be that close and that dangerous while being still so defensively responsible, because it's all about speed and quickness and high guard. You know what I'm saying? That went away for Tyson when they pulled Kevin Rooney from his corner, when Don King was, picking out all the people that would get in the way of his money takeover of Tyson. That's what led to the breakdown, where yes, he was still a puncher and dangerous through through the Buster Douglas loss, through the 2 fights with Razor Ruddock, through the comeback initially post jail. But the craft, the speed to some degree, a lot of that was gone. It was kind of back for the Roy fight. But you do see a lot of people rightfully basically saying like a lot of body shots in that fight. Not really a lot of headshots, like as if there was a unspoken agreement between these 2 agent guys. The silent contract, as Teddy Atlas likes to say. Teddy always frames it basically on the idea that like the silent contract comes out when one guy's dominating in the fight and could knock out the other guy, but the other guy basically, without saying it, is like, I'm not going to rush you or try to win. And as long as I don't do that, you don't knock me out, and we'll both go the distance and we'll be happy. That's the silent contract that Teddy Atlas talks about. Maybe there was a silent or even spoken contract, if you will, between Roy and Mike. I don't know. There was, once somebody pointed that out to me and I rewatched it, I was like, there was a lot of body shots in that fight. Okay. But it's still this side of the brain that's like, why are we doing this? Why is my sport, which is now finally going to be broadcast again, to like stupid numbers? if there's nearly 300 million subscribers on Netflix, and we expect there to be a huge boom. I mean, I've already had people text. I cannot believe the amount of people that have texted me about this fight. Like the amount of people that I don't talk to regularly, that are in and out of my life, that aren't combat sports fans, all that stuff, right? But it's all like, I lost my train of thought. Anyway, it's the side of our brains competing against each other. But like Mike might have a chance. But what's crazy is, unlike any other fight I can remember, I'm flip-flopping and alternating, even with the sense, if there is any left in there that I have, of what this actually is. I'm alternating between like, man, this is going to be bad, and it's either going to be a hug fest if Jake doesn't want to get hit, or maybe he's got a silent contract with Mike that I'm not going to, brutalize you. And believe me, as much as the Texas Commission is so freaking liberal that this is the only reason why they host these type of fights, because they'll let you, I can't even think they're going to let Mike take a beating. The referee is Mark Calloy, who's a very respected boxing referee. But that's definitely competing with this whole idea that like, well, maybe Mike could. Look at him in the highlights when he looks so dangerous. You hear him talk about, I've been sparring guys in their 20s and 30s doing 8, 10, 12 rounds. You see him go 8 rounds 4 years ago against Jones. It really entices that side of the brain to be like, all right, I'm not going to be a curmudgeon. We're all going to watch anyway, so stop acting like we won't. But maybe go in there and do what I do on CBS Sports HQ when they have me on, because that's being broadcast to non-boxing fans for the most part, a lot of casuals. We're previewing that fight when I go on there like it is the real deal, and it may be the real deal, and I hope it is. But maybe, as much as I tell myself, relax, who cares? Don't be worried. Don't be fearful of Mike. Don't be fearful of the pro wrestling side of it. Just go in there and enjoy it. There's a few ways it could be really fun and really memorable and really interesting, but there's way more ways it could go really bad. At the end of the day, I will tune in. I'm alternately excited. I have an hour where I'm super excited and I believe Mike can win. And then I have an hour going like, what am I talking about? Like, why are we doing this? But that's what these events are. And if you read my column on Mike Tyson, I don't think he would have done it if not for it being set up exactly the way it is, where there is legitimate danger for him, because there is a real life redemption arc to him. You got to understand, Mike has always been way more self-reflective than he has any right to be for who he is and his background. And I think a lot of that did come from his relationship with Customato, who, in a way brainwashed him to have ultimate belief. Now it was a bully mentality belief. And we all found out in the ring that you can break that wall down of his, especially after his prime was over, when he didn't have that focus and commitment anymore. But it was like, Mike's always been ultra self-reflective. You think like for all the years and decades post-boxing, we've heard Mike vehemently say, I'm never going back to boxing. I'm never going to be that guy again, because he hated who that guy was. The guy that didn't give a damn and did what he wanted during the prime of his career and all the multiple mistakes he made. But like, he's almost 60 years old. He's got 7 kids. I don't know if he's a grandfather yet, but like, he's at this stage of his life where I can understand him taking this fight because of the itch of wanting to compete one more time. But I also believe him when he says it's not about the money. Tyson is doing well right now. But if he's that introspective, then it's got to eat him alive even more than all of us if we live the Tyson experience and in the end of the day just can't help but love him. How much he left on the table in his career. Yes, he ultimately made it in the Boxing Hall of Fame in 2011. I don't want to say it was a controversial pick, but you definitely saw some arguments or tweets of like, did he really accomplish enough? And really what you're putting him in there. I mean, I think what really helped Mike get the Hall of Fame nod was when he came out of jail, he won the title again. It was pieces of the title. Bruce Seldon took a dive. He beat Bruno for the second time, but he did it. But what he's going in the Hall of Fame for is obviously, from 1985 to 1988. He was never the same guy that he was at the very top of the mountain in 1988 when he knocked out Michael Spinks, the unbeaten lineal champion, to fully unify that undisputed title. And he knocked him out in 91 seconds and scared the crap out of him. We know that story. But do you realize Mike Tyson was 21 when that fight happened? That's the mountaintop. It was all downhill from there. He was 21 years old. Now, late 21, like 21 and 10 months. But he was 21. And it unraveled so quickly after that. And then he loses 3 years of his physical prime in jail due to rape. And the comeback was, like it was a watered down version of him, but it was fun as hell. And he made a lot of money and made some big fights. And then it became a really bad train wreck. You don't think the competitor, the honor side of his heart, is embarrassed? Not what the people think about him, but about what he thinks about himself. He knows what he had. He was dealt an incredible hand. I mean, when he was like 13 and 14 years old, Cuss was taking him to smokers and he's knocking adults out. I mean, this guy was a phenom. And somebody who probably would have ended up in jail or in a life of crime if the confluence of events didn't lead him to Cus D'Amato, but they did. And he's the heavyweight champion at 20. And he's not washed up by 25. He goes into jail at 25. And again, he comes out of jail, he wins the title, but he's not the same. And, by 30, he's a mess. I'm not saying fighting Jake Paul or even beating Jake Paul fixes everything. But I can't help but romanticize the idea that Mike might actually be happy for the first time in his life. And that, yes, there was a level of exercising demons of what he did with Roy Jones in that exhibition match. But remember, it wasn't Jake that wanted this fight to be a real fight. It was Mike. So I do understand that he's not like your typical 58-year-old. He's in way better shape and he's a mean dude. And that quote that everybody's talking about manufactured killer and natural born killer, you got to take it into account to some degree. But the idea of Mike knocking out Jake Paul to win it, if it's even possible, if it even happens, it's so much bigger to me than break the internet, than taking the Foreman Moore moment and, multiplying it by 1 million, even though it's a fight that doesn't really mean anything at all against a YouTuber. But maybe it really means something to Mike, who knows he punted and shit the bed on one of the greatest hands. Like, if you didn't live it when he knocked out Spinks, it wasn't a hot take. It was almost fact that everyone believed he would go undefeated and retire as maybe the greatest heavyweight of all time. Like that, it wasn't like, oh, no, dude, like Michael Spinks had just beaten Larry Holmes twice. He's never lost. An Olympic gold medalist, maybe the greatest life heavyweight of all time. And he just demolished him. That's the mountaintop at 21. And he never got that back. And he let Don King ruin his career and life. And a lot of bad things happen. But now he's happy. Now he's obviously in the age where he should be out in his back bird sanctuary or sitting on the couch or by the pool. But that itch is there. And I don't think that itch is for the money. And I don't think that itch is for anything more than maybe going back and trying to some degree to right what's wrong. Because even though he deserved to be a pariah, let's not forget that Mike Tyson was literally a boxing pariah for the entire second half of his career. And even before the Holyfield bite, which sent him into full pariah mode, it wasn't like everybody was happy that when he got out of jail and was suddenly making big money and back into fights. Us as teenagers were overflowed with excited. Like, finally Mike's back. But he went to jail for rape, right? So maybe there's some deeper level win, lose, or draw of a moral win in this for Mike, that maybe that side of my brain, the side that cares about him and is really scared and trying to protect boxing, maybe that side needs to back up and just let Mike have his moment. Because win, lose, or draw, there's some level of healing in this for him. And I think there's a lot of moral ways he can win. And I also think it's actually possible that he could win. And forget what that would mean to old boxer getting up off the couch to knock off YouTuber. Who cares about that? What would that mean for Mike? He's lived the lives of 10 people. And he still wants to challenge himself because living life to the extremes is the only way he knows how. At least this is a relatively safe and healthy extreme. Not really. It's boxing. What the hell am I talking about? But I don't know. Enough of me talking in circles longer than normal. If you're still tuned in, now I'm going to give the ball up. It's up to you people. Hit me in the feel hole, in the sweet spot with your questions. Let's talk about whatever the heck you want. Are you ready? Mikey, Chin, what else you got? All right, A. Franco, a guy who can really fight, by the way. A guy who goes into those firemen, police, New York City fights, or maybe it's not New York City, but a guy who can fight, all right? Franco says, what were you doing during Paulie Ayala versus Bones Adams? Did you get the opportunity to write about those fights? No, that was before my time as a journalist. And I do have to report, for being very knowledgeable to a certain degree of a lot of boxing history, and having certainly watched Paulie Ayala and know a decent amount about him, I probably don't know his career on the level that I should. And you're making me, Franco, want to go back and check this out, and maybe we can have a further discussion on this. But I wasn't watching, so that was a blind spot in my fandom. But I'm excited to go back and check that out. And that is a beauty of doing that, because, you know, it's the same thing with my pro wrestling fandom. It's like there's legitimate gaps in there, or in boxing, there were times I was heavyweight only, right? Or pay-per-view only as a fan. There's nothing more I love than going back at, like, I recently watched James Toney Michael Nunn under that same regard, meaning I didn't watch that specific fight, although I was there for parts of Tony's rise. And it's like, I was talking to a UFC fan in the DMs the other day that was like, he said basically the first time he ever heard of James Toney was the Randy Couture fight. And that whole sequence, Tony looked like a clown and, you know, act like a clown for the money and the payday, and got absolutely handled. And I get that if that's your only entry point, you don't even realize how great that guy. What if your only entry point was seeing Tony as a blown up heavyweight or something, and you forget when he was pound for pound, you know, right there at 1 or 2 in his middleweight and super middleweight prime. That Michael Nunn fight was such a coming of age for James Toney. I love that crap. All right, back to your questions. What do you got here? Let's go. L&W. Always got my back. Thank you, brother. MVP of this chat, okay? Always there when you need him. In my opinion, he wants to know, what is Tyson's best win? Is it Michael Spinks? So it is Michael Spinks. And it's not just like, oh, first round demolition, and I'll get to Tacoma Roma 1 second, and 91 seconds. And it was really, Alan, the idea that, like, this guy was the lineal heavyweight champion. This was the guy who moved up from light heavyweight, didn't stop at cruiser, and upset Larry Holmes with the Spinks Jenks, and then did it again in the rematch, and then didn't really have a direction, was sitting out for a while. And then Tyson comes up, unifies all the belts, right? They're trying to pull Larry Holmes out of retirement and throw him a couple million to get in there with him. And Spinks finally comes back. And the same thing Mike Tyson was doing to people on the way up, scaring the life out of them, he somehow did it to one of the greatest fighters of that era. So it's not only the best version of him, that is the argument you make. You go the Tyson in the Spinks fight, just the same argument I like to make of Riddick Bowe in the first Holyfield fight, when they brought in Mackie Shilstone, and he committed to nutrition and exercise and got into sick, almost 15-round shape. I always say that version of Riddick Bowe at 6'5", I'll put it up against any heavyweight on their best night in history, and we'll see what happens. Bowe didn't keep that up, but that's the best version. Tyson versus Spinks is the best version. Is there any other wins in the argument, Alan? Might be the better question. I think I'm going to put in, really, all his best wins were in that 85 to 88. It just is. And it's going to have to be him winning the title over Berbick at age 20 and just running through him. And you know, Berbick had retired the dried ass husk of Muhammad Ali. And, you know, there was some through line and connection, and Ali going up to him before the start of the fight and being like, knock this, you know, guy out. And then maybe the Larry Holmes fight, even though that wasn't the best version of Holmes at that time, because he had been retired for a bit after the Spinks fights and was very upset at the scoring in those fights and didn't want to come back, but came back, got absolutely demolished. So I'm not saying like that was there was better versions of Larry Holmes after that. Because don't forget, when George Foreman started coming back and making big money and getting himself into title fights, like the first fight against Evander Holyfield, Larry Holmes was like, I still got it. And he had a really good comeback. He beat Ray Mercer. Like, he got himself into a title. He actually fought pretty well against Holyfield in that title fight, even though Evander was maligned for it. So I'm going to put that Larry win at that time as his third biggest win. Yeah, it's unfortunate. It really is unfortunate. Somehow this guy made the Hall of Fame, and he made it because of what he did in that, 3-year run there. But that's wild. All right, let's keep it going. What do you got for me? Let's go to Tacoma Roma. That guy's really moving up the ranks here. That guy's coming for it all. Great question. And thank you for the support on this chat, Tacoma. Favorite in-game dunker, 3-point shooter, and ball handler. My favorite in-game dunker of all time is Sean Kemp, the Rain Man. Unfortunately, he could never get over the hump in dunk contests. It was usually his fault. His best chance came in what I consider one of the most underrated dunk contests in history, which was 1991 in Charlotte, when D Brown, pump up the shoes, blindfold yourself dunk. And by the way, I was a Celtics fan, so watching that, Oh my God. I mean, I had that one of those, mini hoops that you put like on your closet door and then you close the door and it's like pretty sturdy. And I had a ball that bounced. So, I mean, I probably dunked for 5 hours, really pissed off the neighbors below me at that apartment I was living at the time in 7th grade. Kemp should have won that one. He kind of fumbled down the stretch, but he had to be 6'10" and 11 and do that. But you're not asking me in contests, which he could have and should have done better during his time in contests. But in-game dunker, to have somebody that height be that athletically explosive, and it wasn't about the height of the jump as much, it was about the length of the jump and the jazz that he would throw in there, the pizzazz, the jazz hands, the Lister blister pointing down at Alton Lister, the one where he put it on Chris Gatling so bad that Gatling was like, I gotta dab you up for that. I was like, yeah, man, yeah, there's nobody that I've enjoyed more. And it's good for Kemp that he like became especially for like a 3 or 4 year stretch, like a legitimate, second team all NBA level guy and an all-star and a 20-point scorer. And you know what finals that I didn't rewatch forever and thought it sucked, and then I go back a lot and I rewatch the games, is that 96 Sonics Bulls finals. Let's not forget that's the 96, 72, and 10 Bulls. But they came out and went up a 3-0 lead so quick and looked like they were going to blow Seattle out that like it just took the air out of the balloon of what that series was supposed to be, which was the glove, Gary Payton, Defensive Player of the Year, trying to put that glove on Jordan. Problem was George Karl wouldn't let him until they were down 3-0 and they were like, hey, let's mix it up and try it. And oh, by the way, the Sonics came back and forced a game 6. And Kemp played like a superstar in that final. Some people forget that. 3-point shooter. Well, I'm a Larry Bird fan. So Larry Bird's my favorite player of all time. He's my favorite 3-point shooter. And it really was the game-ending ability and it wasn't just like when the game's on the line, he's going to shoot it. And it's like, it's not like, might he make it? No, he will make it, right? You know what I mean? Like it's that, but it was the extra shit talking and like, how many people have the Xavier McDaniel story of like Bird coming up to him being like, I'm gonna make the shot right here, right in your face. And this is the way I'm going to shoot it. I'm going to turn off of the shoulder. And then he does it right in his face. And, I know Bird's percentages don't hold up to today's because it was at a time when the 3-point shot was still very experimental or just very much like not a regular thing. I mean, that again is one of my biggest problems along with the traveling and the defensive rules. It's just in today's NBA, we got to shoot the 3 every play and all 5 guys on the floor have to be able to hit it. It was a different time back then. I hate Reggie Miller, but yeah, I respect guys a killer. That guy will hit that 3 and take out your heart, even though his greatest shot ever, by the way, what was that, game 5 of the 98 Eastern Conference Finals against the Bulls when he pushed off on Jordan, then hit that 3 and then did that really lame spin around celebration at Market Square when the crowd's going nuts. Reggie was a freaking weirdo, but he was a killer. But yeah, Larry Bird, great favorite ball handler. You mean besides God Sham God, right? You know what I mean? That was my guy. That McDonald's All-American game from 95 is my favorite. I loved him that year at Providence when they made it to the Final 8 in 97. I'm sad that his NBA career didn't pan out a little before his time. I like that he's hung on a lot of NBA teams as a coach and he's teaching people the God Sham God move. His handle was just ridiculous. I liked Hot Sauce too from man. Well, that guy had some handles. The thing I will say though is like people today, their handles are great. Everybody's got handles now. Like I'll sit in the 8th row and, put on a really great 70s rock record. That's completely unrelated to the NBA, by the way. You know what I mean? I'll put something on like Thirds by the James Gang, and with Joe Walsh on lead guitar. And I'll call up Kyrie Irving highlight videos. And sometimes they'll have the ones that are just handles. Kyrie Irving's handle is a close, even though his run with the Celtics really broke my heart, close to my favorite. God Sham God's up there, but Rod Strickland, don't forget about him. Classic New York City point guard, which means you can't shoot, but he can take anybody to the lane, absorb content, and do magical stuff. His handle was great. It wasn't quite Tim Hardaway's crossover, it wasn't quite Allen Iverson, but shout out to Rod Strickland, shout out to you, Tacoma Aroma. Let's go. What you got next? Let's go. All right. Yeah, people got jokes too. Hold on, we got jokes coming in here from Metal Face Gamer. God Sham God was crazy, but we all know Brian's favorite ball handler is Luke Thomas. Yes, he's been known to juggle a few. All right, what else you got here, Chin? Let's go. A Franco back at it. Thoughts on the Coe versus Gallegos upset on the zone over the weekend? So that was on the undercard. Khalil Cole, great question. Man, Eddie Hearn's getting his young guys beat a lot lately. I actually like when that happens. I don't want that to deject promoters from putting people into hard fights, because damn, do we need more of that? Put people in hard fights. But for Coe to, I mean, he kind of just imploded in this fight. He looked so good early, and credit to Gallegos for fighting his ass off and ultimately getting that victory. But it was like this slow, like leaking of air out of the balloon of Coe. And you're like, okay, if he doesn't get him soon, he might get God himself. It was shocking to me that it ended up that way. I never considered him overly high, super class prospect. Good fighter. I mean, there were a lot of fighters on that undercard, by the way, below Boots and Bam, that were fun. I mean, I like the Eddie Hearn cards that he puts on DAZN. I really got to say that. I like the matchmaking there. And even though I don't love DAZN, I like what Golden Boy's done this year as well, in terms of like aggressive matchmaking, because they have to. So I like that Coe was in this fight and that we learned this of him. And we saw this. He didn't close the show, and he imploded to some degree too and fell apart. But looked flashy, looked good early. That was a good card. The Friday night top rank card last week, the Davis brothers card, was also really good, start to finish. I enjoyed that a lot. All right, keep it going here. Thank you, Franco, for getting my back call as always. You know what I'm saying? Hey, what does A stand for? Awesome. Hori Choi says, love from Chang. Shout out to you, brother. I haven't been on the Chang's website in a while over there on Reddit. No, maybe I'm lying. I've been on it all the time. But, you know, there is some comedic genius going on there. And I can't wait to see who gets the truck giveaway. I hope it's a veteran. You know what I mean? So let's support that. There you go. You like your freedom, by the way? Thank him. Okay. This is from Crackman. Thank you, bro, for sliding in here. Seen Turkey's tweet on Ring Magazine. Could they plan to build the most prestigious belt with big money super fights? How deep is the pocket, though? The pocket's pretty damn deep, by the way. Are you asking me how deep the war chest is of Saudi? How much they're willing to spend of it? Or how much do you think? There's a lot of pocket play going on, a little pocket pool, as we used to say, right? There's a re-rack. And re-racks are necessary. I always try to tell people in my family that get upset, like we're watching a family movie. It's like, hold on, there's because you could hurt yourself if you don't re-rack. But pocket pool is taking it to the extreme in the next level. All right, Turkey, Al-Sheikh, and Saudi Arabia, by all accounts, according to the Turkey admitting it on Twitter, have purchased Ring Magazine. Originally, we knew that Turkey and Saudi this year were going to do something like called boxing.net, or they were going to potentially launch it next year. We heard rumors that it was going to be, a site that covers all of boxing and maybe even stream fights on there. That didn't come into play. But the connection here with shout out to Ring City USA, with Ring Magazine, with The Ring, it goes a lot deeper, obviously, than some of the announcements. So the announcements are that it's going to come back with a bang. So it never went away, obviously, right? Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy bought Ring in 2007. But, even though there's writers on there that did great work over the years, and there was some really good work they turned out, it wasn't trending in the right direction. The print magazine ceased production 2 years ago. That was a tough blow to take, not just for the idea of like the newspaper and magazine industry being such a thing of the past for the most part, unless you're subscribed to that Costco connection. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it is a boom, but I've never even seen a chicken bake, by the way. I'm interested though. But it's the whole idea of what are they going to do with the rankings, and how much can Turkey and Saudi like manipulate boxing to some degree with this. So if Turkey, I don't know what he's planning. Is it going to be a league? Is it going to be a super elite platform like the old HBO where, the biggest fights will be on there? Whatever it is, I'm excited to see what 2025 and the Saudi experience, warts and all, I'm excited to see what it looks like. It is interesting, should they revive the ring rankings, make them again what they used to be, like the go-to, the no bullshit. Like, yeah, we got too many titles around in this sport and a lot of corruption with the sanctioning bodies. But it used to be like when Nigel Collins was there, when Eric Raskin was there, that the ring was the truth. And that's why when Nigel Collins, as editor-in-chief, brought back the Ring Magazine titles and made them a thing again, everyone got excited. It was a piece of history, but it also cut through the fat of the alphabet system and said, you can have your 4 and sometimes 6 champions per division. But if you're wearing that ring belt, it means that like you're the number 1 guy who beat the number 2 guy and you earned it. And you're the guy who beat the guy, you're the lineal champion. If we're creating a return to that, and if the ones who end up suffering here are the sanctioning bodies. I'm not against that, and none of us should be against that, because the sanctioning bodies, while having a system in place that in theory, regardless of who you are and where you come from, rewards people and puts them in position for a title, it's been bastardized and played with and corrupted, and the rules don't make sense, and they float too many titles, and they're just basically a cash register and a machine, right? If this either says to all of them that we don't need you and we're creating our own titles, and by creating our own titles, we're making the ring title matter again, if it gets us back to one face, one name, one division, like the purity of the sport, one champion, not, oh, I like this guy. Is he the best? Well, he's the champion, but he's not as good as those other 3 champions who he'll never fight, by the way, because of boxing's bullshit politics. You know, like, I'm done with that crap, and you should be too. But is there a larger overarching potential issue with this union? There might be. I mean, Eric Raskin wrote about that on Boxing Scene. I thought it was a thoughtful piece. I just feel we're getting to the point where, like, Saudi's here, and they're here in a lot of ways and places in sports right now. And as long as nothing too bad is happening, there's some good that's coming from it. And I'm not trying to say I'm selling my soul here. I'm just trying to say, like, they're here and they're not going anywhere. And they do make really big fights. So at some point, you've got to come to terms with that. There's a, Turki in the tweet said things I really liked. He said, like, there would be no connection between Riyadh season and the website. And, they would have full editorial control. And, the rumors that Rick Reno is going to be involved, who founded Boxing Scene and ran it for so many years. And, if they hire an all-star assembly of writers, and, everyone's big fear is, though, does that mean those writers can't be critical of the kingdom? That may be a major issue. You know what I'm saying? That may be a major issue. It's also, if that's true, and if that's the direction it ultimately goes, how different, I do want to ask you, is it? Not that I'm saying, like, because it's done elsewhere, this should be okay, but, like, that's kind of where boxing and MMA and combat sports are, meaning that so many of the major outlets have connections in a lot of ways with TV arms that have contracts. It's like, ESPN.com covers the UFC, and, I like a lot of the stuff that comes out of there, and a lot of people that are working on that staff I used to work with, and I love too. But obviously, without even, like, seeing it in print, like, there's only so far they can go, because that's their partner. They're not going to, like, put out bad rumors or, play into conspiracies or whatever. Like, they got to play it really safe. If that's what it comes down to regarding Saudi propaganda and things going on behind the scenes, I mean, it's not like they're the only outlet. There's other people that can report on that. But in some ways, it's kind of where we already are, meaning the idea of this utopian HBO where any promoter can come and fight there, but, like, nobody's given an advantage over other people. Like, it's not real anymore. Like, promoters signing exclusive deals with networks is what keeps them alive. It's survival. So inevitably, their announced teams on those broadcasts are not going to be overly critical of the promoter or the network. I mean, it's just sort of where we're at these days. Like, Larry Merchant ain't coming through that door, so to speak, anymore. Like, those days might be gone. So I'm less worried about that, although I perfectly see the potential and conflict of interest. I guess there's part of me that is just, like, expecting this in boxing, not wanting to go back to the bullshit we already deal with. And if we're already in this window of getting these really great fights and this potential, I don't know what you want to call 2025 or what it's going to look like, because we don't really know what to call it or what it's going to look like. But to some degree, there's going to be, I think, some positive organization. And there's going to come give back. There's going to become, like, there's a price to pay for that. Without question, there's a price to pay for that. But, an LNW sliding in with the right thing, ring belt meaning something, could happen again. If it means the ring belt means not just something, but everything, and it means that we have one, as much as I don't love the idea of a potential promoter, which in some ways Turki Al-Sheikh isn't, but obviously it's like saying Al Heyman isn't a promoter. Like, if Turki's going to call the shots and he's got the money, people are going to listen, right? Same thing with Al and the promoters with PBC to a large degree. But we're already there with the UFC. The promoter controls the titles. So it's like, we're already kind of there. So I don't want to get caught up in all these potential ethics when, don't forget that old sound drop I used to do on my boxing podcast from Eddie Hearn: boxing and ethics don't mix. They rarely do, right? They rarely do. Maybe this is just an acknowledgement of, like, it's already murky and dirty in this space. But if we could get great fights and promoters working together and get closer to one champion, one division, like one name, and having a not just organization, but like standards in like flowing storytelling and the dots connecting and like, oh God, that's such a dream. There's going to be a price to pay for that. You want great fights, you got to get past sports washing. I'm over it. It is what it is. I don't want anybody to lose their head, but I'm over it. So let me see what Turki's got here. I know there's issues, but boxing, as Paulie Malignaggi famously said after he got robbed against Juan Baby Bull Diaz, boxing is full of shit. I used to love this sport. The problem is I still love it. I can't get away from it. I want more of it. I want to work in it. Put me on the broadcast. Hopefully I don't have to fly to Saudi a lot. I don't know if I ever want to go. Luke Thomas always has me scared, but whatever. Some people have survived so far. We'll see what happens. Let's go to the next one. Let's do it. Let's go. Okay. I can't linger. Jorge Arias. Thank you. Thank you, bro. Seriously. You just won me over. All right. Hey, BC, you've been entertaining me since you filled in for Dan Rafael on his boxing chats on ESPN back in the day. Glad you are still killing it. Appreciate you. Jorge, thank you for saying that, because I may be new to these here YouTube rambles, live chats, Q&As, but I used to do this shit and I loved it. You remember the Saved by the Boxing chat on ESPN.com from, I don't even remember what years, about 3 years in a row I did it. I got to give Dan Rafael credit. If you're a boxing fan and a nut and you come from that era, Dan Rafael's boxing chats were everything. They're like 3 hours. You get breaking news, you get rumors, you get this, you get that. There's jokes. Dan, I think I benefited from not just taking, the format that he used but, absorbing some of his audience in the process and then doing my own thing, of course, in there. But those chats were so fun. So fun. I miss those days. This chat is like a reminder of what that used to be like. It's just fun connecting with the people, like-minded people. Like I have more boxing friends in this chat than I do in real life. You know what I mean? I've got people friends in the industry, but it's like, this is what we get down. This is our life. This is our passion, Jorge. Okay. That's the spirit we're bringing to this live ramble. Alan W back at it with a bang, Alan. Aren't we all giving this Jones response to this situation way too much coverage? That's a fair ass question, Alan. A top fighter being selective and defiant to the media with the choices he makes. What do you expect him to say? Old story. Think Dempsey and Willis. Interesting here. I like that you push back on there, because I always wonder, like, am I going too hard in the pain? Am I holding some weird grudge? I just think with Jon, like, for all the money in the bank he has by being the GOAT, it is offset to some degree by all the bullshit that came along with the Jon process, the drug test failures, the arrest, this being stripped of the title 3 times, like everything that comes with that. And then taking off 3 years and then making us wait another year. So I think normally I would say you're right. And I would say maybe we're getting a little too caught up in this. You know what I mean? Maybe there's some deep rooted psychological connection to him blocking me on Instagram. There's not. I'm here to tell you there's not. But, I'd say maybe I'm being a dick here. I just think Jon is just constantly burying himself with some of these things that he's saying. I don't know. I mean, he is acting like a boxer. I'll tell you that, right? But this isn't the same playing field. It's not the same response right there. I don't have the problem with the defiance. I guess it goes back to what I said earlier. I want to see Jon succeed, and I want to applaud it, and I want to get excited and react to it, and I want to, you know what I mean? I want to be like, man, for all the shit Jon's been through, like Mike Tyson to some degree, for him to still be at this level and still be like, it is awesome. I'm here to tell you there's that part of me that's just so excited to see him fight again. Surreal gain, as Jon calls him. Like, yeah, that was too easy, Jon. I actually respect, because Jon's been saying this week, he's like, when I beat Gane that quickly, he was like, a part of me felt robbed after sitting out 3 years and building up toward this heavyweight return. Like, even he wanted to get more meat off that bone. I just hate them when Jon goes on this spiel about we can go back in time and look at what we were saying about Cyril Gane back in the day. Yeah, Jon, we were saying it before he lost to Francis on one leg by getting out wrestled. And we're saying it before he went into a fight against Tuivasa that he should have been untouched and it was life or death. And we're saying it before he went in there and shit his pants against you. So yeah, like there's the conveniency and the narrative, but like, who doesn't do that right now? Dana speaks to his own narrative right now. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, it just, I guess that's where we're at these days. You just say stuff, and if you said it, it's true. So, difference of opinion. Thank you, Alan, for jumping in though. And, it's like, John, I'm trying to help you be great. I'm trying to take John. I think you'll beat Aspinall. I'm not one of these people that's like, oh, I just want to see you get knocked out. No, John has that ability to pull and focus and pull deep within himself, like few have ever had. I want that Matt Hamill win to get overturned. That lost the DQ. Yeah, but maybe there's part of me that's, soiled and salty too, Alan. Thank you for putting me back on the therapist couch. I'm not afraid of therapy, Alan. All right. It's helped me as a man. Thank you very much. What else you got, Mikey? Hey, Franco, just active. You don't need to love me this much, but thank you. Quick take on Ramirez versus Barboza this weekend. So thank you for saying that, Franco, because this card, Latino night, which takes place in Riyadh on Saturday, and just inevitably getting chewed up and spit out by the Mike Tyson / Jon Jones, clouds hanging over, sucking our attention. But this is a badass fight card. Gilberto Ramirez against Chris Billum Smith as they unify cruiserweight titles in the main event. William Zepeda against, a past his prime Tevin Farmer, but it's this like stay busy fight. We know Shakur Stevenson's coming next. I can't wait for that. Let's see what we got right here. Oscar Duarte's in there against, Batir Akhmedov. Couple other good ones, but the one you're talking about at 140 here, Jose Ramirez against Arnold Barboza, or is that 147? I got to look that up myself. This is like the one that when Rafe Buggs and I on Inside the Box this week, which you can check out on this channel beginning tomorrow, when we were looking at this card and getting excited and doing the whole "Do you care" bit, we cared about this one. My biggest concern for Ramirez is I think he's past it. I think he's on the other side of that hill. And I think that's a big part of why Top Rank, surprisingly, at the time was just sort of like, okay, we'll let you go. I mean, when Top Rank does that, like, it's normally for a major reason, right? Like they did it for Berlanga at that time. Well, they did it for Felix Verdejo, but you got the reason why. Unfortunately, I didn't mean to laugh at that. What am I making Ray Caruth jokes out here? But I will tell you that it's going to be a banger. I love Arnold Barboza. He fights with huevos, Franco. Huevos, big ones, okay? And Jose Ramirez, for not having, big finishing power, is that volume puncher that gets inside and is still crafty and defensively responsible, but makes fights happen. This is going to be a very fun fight this weekend. Do not forget it. Do not miss it. Sign into Riyadh Season and check it out. I'm interested in Zurdo. If he wins, he's talking about going up to heavyweight. I don't know about that, but I'd be interested to see it. But yeah, a few pretty damn good fights on this card. I'm glad they're doing it. It's a little hidden on the schedule. I wish we could kind of separate stuff, but these are competing entities going against each other. So let's just enjoy it this weekend. It's Latino night on Riyadh Season. I'm going to favor Barboza here, but I love that Oscar's already identified that the winner of this is going to be on that 5-on-5 card with Eddie Hearn that he's pitching that could be main evented by Boots Ennis versus Virgil Ortiz Jr. Hell yeah. Like, where's Stefan Marbury in China and the Vaseline? Because I'm going to eat it all. Okay. I want some of that, right? Yes. Next one. Okay. Thank you. Yes. All right. Alan W. just taking over here. You want to come back to reality with Tyson. Watch him against Kevin McBride when he was 37. It was as shameful an ending to a great career, but it came on a stretch of just some really shameful stretch. I mean, the injury against Danny Williams and that stretch, all those like lame. I mean, even the Clifford ATN one, which gave us, I broke my back spinal, but that fight was between two friends and it didn't last that long. I mean, that was a rough stretch, and Showtime put him on pay-per-view for all those final fights. But yeah, that's a sad way to go. And here's what's interesting, though. I'm glad you brought that up, because I thought Sean Zattel, a guy in boxing who I really like, I love his takes, love his delivery. He was on the Sean Porter pod there and bringing up like, hey guys, I know we all want to love Mike, but don't forget that, Mike has a chance to break our heart in this fight, because he kind of was that bully who got, taken when things didn't go in his way in many a fight, especially the second half of his career. And while that's certainly not untrue, maybe I'm too deep into this. Maybe I'm overly sentimental and romantic and protective of Mike, but I really think that again, that's back part of Mike's motivation, because he knows he quit on himself in a lot of points in his career, especially down that stretch. That's part of why I think he wants to run headfirst into danger here. Not for us, not for his legacy, not for money, for him. And it's weird. Like, I've never actually talked to Tyson, but I've seen him in public, and I had that one awesome interaction with him in 2011. I'll tell you in a second. But every time I see him in public, as you would expect, he gets mobbed as aggressively as any person I've seen. And I've been around, some pretty famous people. The aggressiveness that people just want a piece of him, the picture, the touch, the handshake, the hug, it's at such an extreme level that it's like, that's got to wear you down. As much as he's talking on that countdown show about his wife making fun of him and saying, if you walked out of your house and someone didn't say hi to you and didn't bring up your name, you'd fall over and die because, you live for this fame. Well, how could you not if you've had that extreme level of fame that he's had for so friggin' long right there? That is just next level. That I wonder, though, if you go a long time with that and everyone wants a piece of you, at some point you just want to do something for you. That's why I wonder if this is really the deep inside Mike just trying to right a wrong, just trying to close a chapter his own way. It's just my two brains are competing against each other. But Alan W., thank you. Thank you for being you, okay? Love these people in this chat. Thank you. Keep it going here. What else we got, Mikey? Let's go. From Crackman. Yeah, give me that. Give me that, Crackman, all right? Jones's best quality run, Khabib's most dominant. I don't know if I fully understand what language you're speaking here, Crackman, but are you asking me what is Jones's best quality run? Or are you asking me if that's better or worse than Khabib's? Or are you asking me if Khabib's most dominant? I don't know. But Jones's best run, without question, in my opinion, began with the Shogun fight and went on that 5 fight. Like I always say, if you want to put five fights in succession, it's my favorite sort of argument to make about rock music, right? Where I'm like, okay, the moment, if I take the Rolling Stones, Let It Be, Beggar's Banquet, Sticky Fingers, Exile on Main Street, and Goat's Head Soup, which are 5 consecutive albums, the last 4 with Mick Taylor on lead guitar, where they took their 60 sound post Brian Daly, shout out to Brian Daly, Brian Jones, and, reinvented themselves for the 1970s. I'm like, I'll put that 5 album stretch consecutively, literally up against anyone in the history of rock music. It's the same thing, in my opinion, for what Jones did beginning with that Shogun fight, where it was just like one legend, former champion after another, but it was the way that version of Jones was just running through them that you're like, I don't even think he knows how good he is, how good he can become. And it's like, I almost liked Jon more, not when I found out that he was kind of, loose in turn 4 outside the ring, but that he could be that way and somehow be like the performance he put in against Gustafsson in the first fight, whether you thought he won or not, whether you think it's ridiculous that he could be on top and be a, Nike athlete and kind of partying it up and doing the Conor McGregor bit. The fact that he did that and did the nose candy and still could dig, and like, this guy is remarkable and amazing. That leveled off to some degree. He got a little bit older, competition caught up with him, the sport evolved, right? But that's the best run. I mean, Khabib's always been dominant. I think you're trying to ask me something, but I can't figure it out here. But, everything Khabib's done outside of Gleason Tebow has been dominant. Man, that really hurts that Khabib walked away when he did, because I wanted to see more, but I get it. And even though he doesn't have a ton of names, what he did to those names in succession down the stretch, that's up there. That might be up there with Jon. That stretch, what, Khabib's last like 4 fights, just the full on, damn. It's even shocking that Conor McGregor won a round off him. It really is. It really is. I mean, do I believe in my heart of hearts that Gaethje was one calf kick away from sending him into peril? Yeah, I do. Oh, let me finish with that Tyson story real quick in 2011. So I was a lowly dude at ESPN.com. I wasn't even an editor yet in the combat pages. I was like, I was a manager in the mobile video newsroom. Worked with some great people. Made me a man. And I started to pitch to ESPN.com, like, hey, I work in this company. I want to write about boxing. Like, would you take some stories from me? Blah, blah, blah. And, at first I was like, I'd be like, oh, hey, I already wrote the story. I thought you guys might want it. Like, and pitch it to him that way, which is a real cheesy way to do it, but it worked. But I finally got a year later in 2011 where they started assigning me some stories. And I was like, okay, this is great. I wasn't getting paid for them because had a really low salary already with ESPN. But the editor was like, Tyson's going into the Hall of Fame. Do you have any thoughts on it? Can you write a column? Like, what, you got an opinion piece on it? I remember thinking like, wow, you're going to qualify me to write this? Like, hell yeah. Okay, sure. Great. And it turns out it was like the first time I really took a chance, meaning when I submitted this column in 2011 on Tyson on his Hall of Fame career, it was like, I remember thinking to myself, like, I'm taking a chance. I'm writing in a style I don't normally do. It's either going to be like really good or it's going to be really not ready for prime time. And I'm not where I think I am in my career. And luckily it was the latter, and it was very well received. And, it got retweeted a lot, and hey, great job, blah, blah, blah. And it was, I was like, okay, I think I finally did something that I'm really proud of. But then like 3 months later, Tyson tweeted it out. And I was like, whoa. And like, you got to realize, like, I'm nobody in 2011. And then I got an email from Steve Law, who recently passed away a few years ago, but he was, one of Tyson's cornermen forever and was there for him from the beginning in Catskill. And he was like, hey, Mike's trying to get a hold of you. I'm like, me? And he's like, can you give me your number or your email? Because Mike read your story about him and was so touched and felt that nobody properly sort of got like the Mike Tyson experience, but in the way you wrote it, or I guess that I described it. And, it was really the guise of like, the story was like, one day my kids are going to be like, who's this Mike Tyson guy? And I'm going to tell them that, yeah, all these bad things happened, but he still ended up in the Hall of Fame, but I'm not really going to focus on that. I'm only going to focus on what he was on top, which was a superhero, which was, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, that's the Mike that I'll remember forever, because there's never been anything like that and probably never will be again. And it was sort of this like, hey man, for all the negative stuff we can say about him, like, forget that stuff, because he'll never not be that guy from 1988, that guy in the Nintendo game to me ever again. And that, and I'm choosing that. And I love this guy. And you want to talk about one of those early moments in your career where you're like, how did I get here? I got an email from Mike's wife, and she's like, Mike's going to call you and thank you for the story. And she's like, you comparing him to Muhammad Ali, which I didn't, but what I did say in the piece was that Mike's turnaround in the public eye. I remember that he was coming off the Hangover movie at that time. Everyone was like back into Mike Tyson again. I was like, it's so remarkable that he's back to this point, that people love him again so much. It's probably not crazy that when Ali dies, Tyson will be the new ambassador of the sport, the most famous alumni of the sport. And somehow that really touched Mike, the idea that somebody could look at him like that, because Ali was his hero along with Jack Dempsey, obviously. But he called me, but this is like so true to my career, right? He called me when I was in the bathroom at ESPN, and I had kept that phone with me with the volume turned up, like I'm 65 years old in public, the ringer volume. And I was waiting for that call, and I went to the bathroom without my phone, and he called and I missed it. And he left like the most sincere, he sounded like a child on there, like the most sincere and loving message, thanking me and my family, and God bless you, and one day I want to meet your kids, like just like the most amazing response ever. And then I switched phones like 6 months later and forgot to save that message. How stupid is your boy BC right here? And oh, by the way, I missed the call. He's like, hey, I'll let my people get a hold of you. Maybe one time we can talk again. So I emailed his wife back. I'm like, oh my God, I'm an idiot. I missed the call. Like, is there any chance we could do it again? She didn't respond. But then the next day, Mike called back. But I was in the bathroom again. Yeah, I guess I'm a big donk. But shout out to Mike. I appreciated that whole, I appreciated everything about that. That's great. All right, Mikey, you trying to tell me that I bring that question wrong? John Jr., thank you so much for John sliding in here. Mikey's saying that I should have read that question better, and it was, who's the GOAT? Jones has the best run, but Khabib's run was the most dominant. All right, so I let me take that back. John's still the GOAT, and you can watch our you can watch our morning combat high noon debate between Luke and I, where he debated Jon and I debated Khabib with Chuck as the referee. And that episode, by the way, might be the thing I'm most proud of in MK history, because we just had no plan and just, rolled out the balls and the Delta 8s and made magic that time. But yeah, thank you, Mikey, for getting me back on that and interpreting it correctly. Let's keep it going here. Who we got? All right, Alan, thank you so much. Where is Reggie Jackson? So Reggie has recently taken over Sasha the dog's bed, her little circular dog bed in the living room, and he's decided that it's his now and that he wants to spend all of his time there. But once he's done napping, you'll hear him. He'll open this door on his own, and then I was doing a live HQ hit yesterday, by the way. It was like a little more serious, obviously, than MK, and it's like news, and I got a jacket on and a shirt. Shout out to Amanda Guerra, AG2, who was the host. And Reggie's sitting right here. He opens the door. He comes in. He's screaming. He's trying to jump up on me. And I'm like stiff arming him down. That was, I probably should have just introduced him to the CBS audience, to be fair. Where is the One Love hat? Right? Sitting right over there. And it's the Morning Combat staff's least favorite hat of all time. I don't know why. Probably because it makes me look like an idiot, but I love that hat. Bought it on in Jamaica vacation. Shout out. That was the vacation, by the way, that my son got to meet Usain Bolt through like a Make-A-Wish type of thing with the Kids Wish Network, and it was one of the greatest trips of our lives. So that was a commemoration from that, and a midlife crisis purchase. Definitely was. Thank you very much. And Alan's going to close with when is the first boxing fight companion? It's hard. It's hard. By the way, I will be having some form of a BCX post-fight show after Tyson versus Paul Friday night. Stay tuned. It's not going to be like immediately after, because I have work responsibilities first, and then I can bang out on that. But to answer your question, Alan, it's hard when you have work responsibilities. And I'm thankful and proud of the job I have with CBS Sports and the, and the opportunities I get through that. And, I've got to respect that. So there's a lot of times during live fights when I can't be turning on the BCX camera, but if we could figure it out and the time it would make sense, yeah, I'd love to do that stuff. Just like I'd love to go back and rewatch some old fun fights with Rafe and do fun stuff like that. But it's hard because I'm juggling this channel with a couple other jobs, and I'm trying to give it the love it deserves. But sometimes it's got to take a back seat. But we'll get there. Because I'm not shutting this crap down. Well, don't quote that, because maybe I will. I'm thinking this is going to keep going. All right, I'm thinking I'm having fun with this, and it's and maybe we haven't scratched the surface of what it can be yet. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for all contributing. What do we got here? Let's go. Let's hit it. Dalton Trumbo. Who's this guy? Welcome, bro. Appreciate you. Okay. Again, you don't have to act like this guy, but if you do, I'm going to appreciate the shit out of you. He says, is Jon right that the interim title that causes all this consternation was unnecessary? The fight is happening 1 year later. No jinx. Aside from, quote, saving a pay-per-view, did we really need the interim heavyweight title? Great question, Dalton. I don't hate the tone. I challenge my shit. Okay, let's go. But in this case, once again, I'm the freaking biggest protector of not wasting interim titles, of not bastardizing the system like the UFC loves to do, like they did at UFC 236. Never forget it. Both of those great fights didn't need interim titles. Now, did it elevate the fight and make these guys fight their balls off? Yeah, it did. So, like, I've told you that I'm softening a bit. I'm coming around. There are times when I'm just sort of like, yeah, put an interim title, because maybe sometimes that's the only way you're going to make the fight. Okay. In this case, though, Jon got hurt, like legitimately hurt. And they knew right away he was basically going to be out for, the earliest they said he could come back was the summer. So we're all thinking like he's probably out for a year. Yeah, 100%, because I don't think any of us were fully confident, like 100% confident that Jon was going to fight again. Like, you don't know if that's going to be a tough recovery if he gets out of it and he goes, man, I am 37, 38, whatever. Yeah, in that case, Aspinall was knocking on the door by knocking out everybody in the rankings. I saw some meme, maybe Aspinall put it out. I don't know. I get lost on the X a lot. Not the Molly side of the X, but I'm talking about the Twitter account. And where it's like they showed the top 10 and it's like Tom took out so many of these guys across the board. I'm not saying Tom's walking on water and he deserves everything, but like it made sense to elevate him at that point, and it makes sense to put the pressure on Jon to fight him. So the interim title, yes, is causing the consternation. But once again, Jon, your injury caused was the source of the cause of this consternation. And while it's not your fault, you have to adjust to the realities of it. Like what the UFC should have. Here's the thing. This is why I'm mad at what Jon's saying right now. Because the UFC went out of their way to enable him, to give him the best possible comeback fight / potential walk-off fight. Like they are doing everything in their power to keep him happy. Everything. Like I'm even wondering the role he played in the gloves changing. And I don't put this out conspiratorially like Jon made it happen. I heard Jon's comments on it, by the way, and this is Brantendo64, who you know we love in these parts, a MK guy from way back. Did the UFC bring back the gloves as a retirement gift for notorious eye poker Jon, or is it just a hilarious coincidence? It's kind of both. So here's the deal. We thought this was the New York State Athletic Commission. Shout out to Duty. She loves the gloves. Big fan of her work. She, researched it, and it's like, no, the new gloves are approved by the New York State Commission. But Jon Jones said it at the media day that Hunter Campbell came up to him and basically said, there's so many old school fighters on this card from before the changes. So rather than have them get adjusted to it or have issues with it, they're going to go to the old ones. Like that ever happens. Like, what if Jon came back and was like, yeah, I really hate the Venom shorts, hate the way they fit. Can you mind if we all wear Reebok shorts for this one? Like, it's never going to freaking happen, right? No. So, like, I don't mean to be conspiratorial or to continue to Sean Kemp style dunk on, by the way, one of the best Sean Kemp dunks came from his rookie year at the Knicks at the Garden when he went up on that 2-hand. And I think it was Eddie Lee Wilkins went up for the block and he went underneath and then did oh my God. I don't mean to do that on Jon. But it kind of feels like when Jon says at media day today, yeah, they mailed me these gloves and I just hated it. I don't doubt that it's not a major change, but it was created to create a major change. And I'm not even here to say that the new gloves are perfect or that they're not affecting knockout numbers or damaging faces more based on the material or what have you. Like there's going to be a fallout when you make a decision and you make a change, but they actively made this change because of the gratuitous eye poke. So now we're going back just because there's two old guys in the main event. Like, what the hell are we doing here? So yeah, it is a little bit fishy, but yeah, I got consternation issues apparently. All right. Maybe if I don't know, whatever. Let's keep going. Let's keep it going. Thank you, Brantendo. I hope you're well, bro. Okay. Yeah. Nice guy. All right. I mean, we can have, we can have some talks here. I got to figure out how to get you guys on the screen with me. Is that even possible? Or am I running the risk that somebody shows their dong? You know what I mean? Or I run the risk that like suddenly there's like Nazi symbolism and I'm like, how did we get here? Maybe if we screen the people, properly, we can do this. Blade K is here. Thank you, Blade. Thank you, brother. Sister. I don't know. It doesn't matter to me. Jon called Tom an a-hole during today's press conference. Does allegations of domestic abuse, a hit and run, and drunk driving not make you an a-hole? I really, I've actually had a really good time subscribing and reading to the MMA Draw, the Nate Wilcox production, the former Bloody Elbow, right? And they had a hell of a piece on like, hey, we all love MMA, but it's too bad the three biggest stars in this promotion's history are all a-holes. Yeah, Jon's kind of an a-hole. I didn't see that Tom said that, but like the record's there. Again, I tried to separate art from artist best I can. I'm still super excited to see Jon. I want Jon to walk away as the GOAT. I want him to walk away as undefeated. Change that record now. We all know what that Matt Hamill fight was. Now, do I want Jon going out of his way to protect it like he's Mayweather? No, because we don't do that in the UFC and the MMA unless the company enables you because it makes sense for them business-wise. And by the way, it may end up making sense for them business-wise to do Jon Poetan. It may. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. Fancy Mortimer, right in here. If Stipe married REM Sting or Michael Stipe, he'd be Stipe. Dude, I should pay you $2, Fancy, for dropping that joke in here. Wow. Stipe. Yeah. Yeah, I saw Stipe shirtless for his photos. He didn't look awful. I mean, he's a 42-year-old athletic man. And by the way, I did ask him in my interview, for as hard as that dental surgery interview was, I did ask him his thoughts on everybody believing on the internet that he can't walk, because we saw him walk down the tunnel at that UFC fight that time. He looked like he was kind of waddling like an old man. That old man can still knock you out. All right. So yeah, do I want to see if he can suddenly stuff the takedowns of Jon and make this a boxing match? What that looks like? It's interesting. I don't know. Devin Tuck. Yeah, bro. Yo, Mr. BC. How did you like Tampa? Interesting question. Tampa. All right. So one time I thought I loved Tampa, but now I'm realizing I went to a editing journalism conference in 2013, and I stayed in St. Petersburg, right on the water and on the ocean, and it was awesome downtown. And I was like, man, I love that area. So I talked that area up, and I had a great time that week in St. Pete. Went to a Rays game, saw an old buddy, like, did the stuff you do. Went over that big ass bridge that everybody unfortunately jumps off of. And then when we went to Tampa for the Jake Paul fight, I was like, yo, Luke Thomas, Tampa's kind of awesome, right? I love that area. And I'll say it wasn't like it sucked, but and it's also very Luke Thomas to be told that something's good and then for him to go try it and then to be like, oh, this sucks. Like nobody loves doing this one thing more than Luke Thomas does, which is you'll sit down to him at dinner, he'll get the drink menu, he'll instantly order the most ridiculously expensive and obscure drink with like an umbrella coming out of it, and there's like a tampons in the back of it, like, it's just like this full on, and then it'll take one drink and go, oh, this sucks, and it gets another one. It's his quirk. It's what the man does. You know what I mean? I don't really know how we're talking about Luke here. What were we even talking about? But yeah, he does that a lot. All right. So yeah, he might have. I think we went to Tampa and it was okay. I went back to Tampa for a different fight. Yeah, we stayed right down in that area where Tom Brady was really drunk when he got on the boat after they won the Super Bowl. It was all right. It was pretty cool. It didn't change my life, but I like that greater area. We went on like a mini vacation last year where I visited my parents who live in Daytona Beach, which is an interesting city. And then we stayed for a bit in like the Sarasota, Clearwater area. Yeah, I'm down with that area. That's really nice. But Florida's something. It's something, guys. All right. It's really something. Allen W. That's my guy. Bam or Inoue. Who wins if they fight right now? So that really is starting to become that fight in the distance, that super fight that we're building towards that does kind of feel inevitable. Although, Alan, I didn't even know that my guy, El Shakal, Guillermo Rigondeaux, was returning to the ring last night at 44 on ProBoxTV. And then he knocked the dude out with a body shot early and then called out in a way, which is awesome and hilarious and so Rigo to just disappear for a while, threaten to get into bare knuckle, and then show up in a real fight, knock a dude out, and call it Inoue. But Bam versus Inoue, it does depend on the weight. I don't really think it depends on the timing unless the timing is necessary for, let's say, Bam to move up and get accustomed to the new weight class. But if they did it now, so right now, Bam fights at 112 and 115. I keep saying 118, but I'm wrong. He fights at 112 and he's in mostly 115 right now. Inoue's obviously at 122, his fourth division. Now, I know what everybody's saying, like, oh, we're talking about 115 to 118. It's like 3 pounds. Just make the jump. Who cares? It is a lot, which is why those weight classes at the lower end in boxing are separated sometimes by only 3 pounds or 4 pounds, because it does make a difference at that smaller size. But the ease that Bam is cutting through these folks, like Guevara on Saturday, just like the ease. He's going to do some more big stuff at bigger weight classes. Bam told me in my interview that he can fight as high, he believes, as 126 and maybe 130. So I get the idea of saying, let's do it now, but we do need first Bam to move up to 118. And then we need him to establish himself there without Inoue already going up to 126. And I don't think he will. I don't think Inoue is going to rush to do that, because I think the only reason he would is if he's getting closer to a Gervonta Davis super fight that has been talked about a bunch and debated. And I never really believed that it was going to be possible, but I didn't think Tank was going to linger at 35 this long. But I think Inoue is starting to realize that, like, this isn't necessarily his ceiling at 22, but like 4 divisions up and he's still like dominating, but starting to find some areas of limitations of where he's at. I wonder if he's looking around going, okay, I still got to fight Akhmadaliev. He's got that comeback in December against Goodman. I think that's what's happening. And then, of course, we're talking about what's his next in between kind of super-ish fight. Well, it's Junko Nakatani, the bantamweight champ from Japan. And I do get a lot of people, Alan, saying, hey, BC, you talk a lot about Bam versus Inoue, but why do you never talk about Bam versus Nakatani, who's at 118 right now and undefeated, and he's kind of like knocking on the pound-for-pound door of late? Mostly because I believe that's sooner for Inoue And I believe that Nakatani is going to move up, and I believe that that's going to be a big fight for them both next year. So it's not like I think Bam's going to like go through Nakatani on the way to Inoue in that same way. I do think Bam has to go to 18 first and establish himself. I don't know if that'll be next, but okay, get to your point, BC. What if they're fighting at 122? You still got to favor Inoue's size, even though size obviously isn't like the dictation of why he would win that fight. They're both super, super, super elite, and Bam is so damn efficient and perfect in some ways. But what makes Inoue great? The fact that he's almost freaking perfect, right? Even though he's starting to find some limitations here, got dropped by Neri, who is a big puncher. Yeah, it's still going to be Inoue right now. The pop, I mean, he's the bigger man with the bigger pop, and the power is so sick and sublime with the speed. But you obviously want to see with Bam's balls and the fact that for a forward charging fighter, his craft and technique and awareness and IQ at 24 is sick. And Inoue was the same way, by the way, when he landed on the scene and aggressively climbed the weight classes. I still haven't figured out in my head how Bam would beat him, but I want to see how close he can come. Like, you know how I talked up a lot, and I think a lot of us did, but the idea that like when Inoue moved up and he's like, for my first fight at 122, I'm going to fight the best in the division and one of the pound for pound best in Stephen Fulton Jr., cool boy Steph, who now goes by Scooter full time. And I think that, you know, we all wanted to see like, man, even though he's not the puncher of Inoue, Inoue's moving up in weight to his weight class. Fulton at the time was kind of running out of time physically to be able to make that weight. I thought he was going to give him some resistance. I really did. And the fact that Inoue just chopped him up like nothing was a damn eye-opener. And it's part of the pause I have. Not, you know, I think Bam's a better fighter than Fulton. Although I think Fulton's really good. I think he's kind of past his window of how great he'll be. It's how much can he reinvent himself at 26? Can he win against Figueroa in the rematch that they pitched, but it's not official? I hope they make it soon. I love it. I got to see Bam do against Inoue what I thought Fulton might. That's the intrigue to me. But I still believe it's an Inoue fight to win. But I just want to see if they can get there. Could he do it at the Tokyo Dome? Like, it's just going to be wild. All right. It's going to be wild. Let's go. Let's keep it going here. Okay. Shout out to Boston Scally for making me look old and young at the same time. The Aussie Gorilla, big fan. He paying US dollars too. Appreciate that. Did you conduct an interview other than maybe Mike Perry, that made you uncomfortable? I don't have many in this category, although I do acknowledge there's been times in my career where I've been a little bit too itchy to make a soundbite happen and challenge somebody. Never out to get anybody under any circumstances. There's certain times, though, when you know you're trying to write a certain angle, you're trying to get answers that haven't been gotten yet, and you're going to ask tough questions. I've had some rough interviews with Adrian Broner when he was in his early prime, you know, ones where he got sick of the line of questioning and hung up on me. Like, I've had some of those, but like, you know, not been my life threatened or anything like that. I mean, Mike Perry was like, next time I see him, I'm going to kill you. And I mean, you know, it got pretty extreme there. I did piss off Tyson Fury when I talked up. Fury's one of those guys who I just hadn't interviewed one-on-one for so long. And I think it was the second Wilder fight ahead of that. Evan Korn of Top Rank, like, finally hooked me up and got me it. Or maybe it was a different fight, but, anyone that remembers that interview, I was like so excited. I was bringing all the one-liners and the sound bites that we would play on the boxing pod with Rafe about, you know, Fury's hilarious. He has a history of that. And man, did I screw up that interview by going to the question about his dad's eyeball way too early. Now, a reminder, Tyson Fury makes the interviews a roller coaster ride because you never know which version of him day to day or hour to hour is going to show up, because sometimes he's like, not about talking about boxing at all. And every answer is, hey, it's a shit hustler and I'll knock him out. You know, like, that's like, and then there's times where he's like reflective. And I had a sit down interview with him once, fight week of the second Wilder fight, where he was like introspective and talking about legacy and like caring about it. And then I interviewed him again after that, and it was the same type of BS. So I think I was losing control of that interview quickly with Fury, meaning I wasn't getting good responses to any angle I went. So I broke glass in case of necessary, you know, about his dad and his dad removing the eyeball of that dude in a bar fight and going to jail. And that's why he can't fly to the US. And I went to that too quickly and too aggressively, and Fury turned off and then eventually just hung up at the, before the interview was over. I've had some good Chael Sonnen interviews during his Bellator runs where he would, he's always got that joke to set you up with on the way out where he like ends up hanging up, but it's like part of the joke. He caught Dana White with that. He caught me with that a bunch of times. Those are great interviews, but I don't have a long history of ones where, I interviewed Gary Russell Jr. on my old boxing podcast, the fight after he lost the title to Vasily Lomachenko. And it was known heading into that fight that like Gary Russell had the fastest hands in boxing. And the most surprising part about that fight, beyond the fact that Loma took it to him, like, put some punches on him, was that Loma was like way faster than Gary Russell in that fight. Now, the disclaimer I always add is that I love Gary Russell, including now interviewing him now that he's like mostly a trainer. I love that he talks trash and he's got balls and that he's introspective. And I also love that he fought hard in that second half when he was getting outclassed. He never stopped trying. But I brought up in that interview, I was like, yeah, well, man, we used to say like you had the fastest hands we've ever seen, which is a dick way to ask the question. And was just like, what did you learn about the difference in speed when we thought you had the fastest hands and then, Loma's were faster? And I'm like, was he faster? Could you feel that? And Gary's like, I'm not here to answer these type of questions about this bullshit. I will not entertain. Like, he absolutely gave it to me. But I may have had to cut him in that moment, though. So I'm never afraid to take that on the chin. I mean, was it easy on the Diaz Masvidal tour? By the way, if you didn't watch that wellness check I did with Jason Aaron, MK Villain, we did have some fun nuggets shared because Jay was the producer of that ill-fated press tour, which neither of those guys ever wanted to answer my questions. But that was a tough job. It was a tough job. Somebody had to do it, but it was a tough job. All right, let's get inside a few more of these. Two Changs, yeah, my guy from South Oregon. Big John and Tyson is in. Okay, Big John. Are you talking about Big John McCarthy? I assume said Tyson is in his top 5 heavies of all time. I don't put Tyson in my top 10. Do you put him in the top 10? So because of Tyson's fame and because of how great he was in that initial boom pair, winning the title at age 20 and 85 through the Spinks fight in 88, he was incredible, absolutely incredible. That people like assume, oh, then that means he's one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. Like when people that aren't hardcore fans, when I bring up his 2011 Boxing Hall of Fame, induction, and I say it was a little controversial. There was a little question about had he actually achieved enough. People are like, what? What? I mean, I know there's just this assumption, maybe because he did have 2 peaks, meaning he did come out of jail and get back to the title. Are you saying John Fury or are you saying Big John McCarthy? Either way, it's the same topic. Is people are like, holy crap, what are you talking about? Maybe because he had the 2 peaks, that it's just the assumption, but the reality is no, he's not a top 10 heavyweight of all. Do you know how hard it is? I've done the top 10 heavyweight exercise a bunch of times for podcasts, for stories, for fun, for whatever. Do you know how many great heavyweights like Gene Tunney that you're like going to inevitably leave out? I've tried to make the argument that if Tyson Fury had gone the distance in this era and beaten everybody, and that it might have been hard to keep him out of the top 10. And do you realize who has to get bumped for that? Right? No, Tyson's not there. If you want to bring up the idea of peak for peak, you're always Tyson. The Spinks, the 1988 Mike Tyson was going to be up there in any, even with the 5'11" size, right? 5'10", 5'11" size, always going to be up there. Nobody's ever been that quick, explosive, and powerful at the same freaking time. It's like Manny Pacquiao at heavyweight. It's just ridiculous. And you don't even count the intimidation. He wasn't in a great heavyweight era. It wasn't awful. To be able to beat any form of Larry Holmes and beat an unbeaten Michael Spinks, you're just going to put those 2 wins up and just be so proud. And he's got other ones in there too. But if you really look at the totality of his career, I mean, he not only lost these big fights, he got handled, like the first Holyfield fight, the Lennox Lewis fight, the Buster Douglas. I mean, he was in the Buster Douglas fights. It's the sneaky part about it is that fight was awesome. It's one of the greatest heavyweight title fights of all time and the biggest upset of all time and the craziest outcome of what happens when you take your foot off the gas and I mean, Tyson in those fights leading up to the Buster Douglas fight was an absolute mess. But no, he's not top 10. And I see people even sometimes going, Well, it's probably like Tyson or Ali, who's the best heavyweight ever, right? No, it's not. It's Joe Louis and Ali. Please put some respect on that name. Like, and it's in, I'm one of the bigger Tyson fans there's ever was, even though I wasn't a super fan of him in the 80s. I actually liked Tyson a lot more in the 90s, which is crazy. And what I'm really saying is Tyson from exiting jail through the bite fight, because, through the first Holyfield fight, because there's a reason why the first Holyfield Tyson fight is a top 3 fight all time for me. The delay in not getting that fight when you thought you would have or should have so many times in the early 90s, and then the fact that everybody thought Holyfield was just an old, washed up stepping stone. So many of us entered that fight, Tyson fans, because Tyson was about defiance. It was about, yeah, he went to jail, but now he's back and he's a badass and he's blowing through everybody. But you exited that a Holyfield fan because it was such a just tremendous performance and like a revival. I loved him because he was counterculture, just like I liked Hollywood Hulk Hogan and the NWO, right? But you can't let that love blind you from what he accomplished and what he didn't accomplish. He never won a fight in which he was knocked down. I mean, there's some damning evidence against him, but that early peak was just so just insane. It's just insane how great he was for that period. It's like you wish like hell Cuss could have lived, or Jimmy Jacobs could have lived longer, or they could have stiff-armed Don King, and he could have at least kept Kevin Rooney in there the whole time. How would it have been different? But also he was a level of star, which is just, he had lions walking around his mansion. He had actual lions walking around panthers. Good Lord. All right. What else you got? What else you got? Thank you, 2 Chainz. All right, that guy is saying, BC, I'm sleepy. Should I put water on my? Let me put some water on your balls. If you don't know that sound drop, if you didn't listen to the Rafe and BC pod for years, that does come from Eric Morales versus the King, Zahir Rahim of Philadelphia, who looked like the best fighter in the world that one night that he solved Eric Morales. But yeah, that was the great Ray Torres, the translator, as the trainer is trying to tell Eric that he's about to just douse his nuts underneath. Like, Eric, let me put some water on your balls. I don't know why Rafe and I just love the irreverent side of boxing so damn much. You know how many pictures I have? And like, in your phone, you got like your pictures, you got like the favorites, like the saved ones. They're just all ridiculous boxing moments. Like before Mayweather-McGregor 2, when that guy was playing the flute solo for the Argentine national anthem, it looked like he had like a penis in his mouth. Like these are just like when Cedric Agnew's parents were in Atlantic City that night and they were dressed to the nines, like they were going to church for that Sergey Kovalev fight. These are the moments you just don't forget. Do you remember that guy after Brandon Rios got and robbed Diego Chavez that was doing this in the crowd when they zoomed in, or Ron I love how ridiculous this sport is. It's the stupidest sport ever. All right, what else you got? Crackman getting in that Crackman getting that ass again. ProBoxTV constantly delivers. Do you have or recommend any more unusual or exotic combat sports watching besides the big name promotions? So ProBoxTV is they figured it out over time. There's been a lot of changes there and a lot of craziness behind the scenes too, but they've kind of figured out how to be whatever the closest thing we could have to kind of like a modern day showbox in a way, but not really. Like it's not always just prospects. It's sometimes guys going in the other direction. I like that. I mean, Jojo Diaz went on there and lost again. And they do have Jimmy Smith now on play-by-play. I thought that bringing him in and getting rid of Mike Goldberg was a very good upgrade. And Paulie's still Paulie, and you got Chris Algieri. Sometimes they've got Tim Bradley. So yeah, they've become a nice surprise. They air on like Wednesday nights, so you kind of got Tuesday night USA, Tuesday night fights vibes, which is a great vibe to regain. I like the announcers. I like that some of these PBC guys like Chris Colbert, right, that are kind of on the way out or looking for dates. Jarrett Hurd, they'll show up on there. Do I have any? I'm not currently in love with like a lower level weird. Like there's no ECW in my opinion in boxing or MMA, meaning like some regional promotion that's rising so aggressively because of one gimmick or one thing they do differently from everybody else. That's what I wish somebody could. I wish somebody could take the spirit of what was ECW and maybe not focus on that form of ridiculousness, but take that edgy spirit and bring it to a smaller promotion where you're basically saying, the sum of our parts is not that impressive, or, individually we're not that impressive, but the sum of our parts, if we all believe in this vision and execute it, it's kind of what we all wanted or hoped Ring City USA to be during that 1.5 years on NBC Sports, where I was very lucky to be on there with Sean Porter and Bob Papa and Curran Bhatia, by the way, who's got a huge role on that Jake Paul, Mike Tyson Netflix documentary. Shout out to Curran. That felt unique because we were like doing it in the parking lot at Freddie Roach's gym during pandemic, or going to the Puerto Rican National Center, or going on an old San Juan right on the edge of the ocean there. Like, there was some cool things. I was like, this could be something different. Not enough of that is. Maybe Dana White Contender Series is the closest thing, but it's also so corporate and so like major league as this, this meat house, this like slaughterhouse where we produce the big chunks of steak that are going to get thrown into the big fight soon for 12 and 12. By the way, I shouldn't have made that comment to Rich Franklin when he was talking about the hell he went through again, the hell he put on David Loiseau, and then seeing him in the hospital after. And then I was like, oh yeah, not bad for 12 and 12. That was a dick move. I shouldn't have done that. I apologize to Rich. You're not an ace hole. Thank you. LNW, never an ace hole. Ricardo Mayorga was ECW. You know what? You're right. And I love that Carlos Pratish right now, the UFC welterweight, is vibing in a very Mayorga way. I heard him on Ariel's show saying he smokes, what did he say? He smokes 8 to 10 cigarettes a day, like right now still while in training. And it's something he's always done since a teen. Mayorga was that. He really was ECW. And that's what's so crazy about that, James. I know, South Oregon, bro. I know you respect that first Vernon Forrest versus Ricardo Mayorga fight, 2003 in Temecula. That's just like the fact that Mayorga could take that craziness and that crazy style where, yes, he'd almost throw 2 punches at the same time. His jab was so quickly followed by his right and so crazy and rusty and non-traditional that he just like throw 2 hands at you. The fact that he took that to the title level and beat a guy who had a claim for pound number 1 after sunning Shane Mosley twice, unbeaten Shane Mosley, Vernon Forrest turns him away twice, and then Mayorga gets him. But what's even crazier than Mayorga doing that to Forrest in the first fight, stopping him by luring him into a brawl and kind of gassing him and knocking him out brutally against the ropes. He then won the Mayorga had no business outboxing Vernon Forrest in that rematch. I can't even believe, from there, Mayorga became more of he's going to get pushed up in a pay-per-view against Trinidad or De La Hoya, and he's going to act crazy, and he's going to party all night, and he's going to get knocked out. And then he'll come back down and win 2 fights and then do it again against Shane Mosley do you remember the build Showtime did when old Fernando Vargas fought Mayorga and they did a pay-per-view? It was just 2 batshit crazy old guys that loved to brawl. Do you remember those press conferences and the weigh-in when they put that plastic glass between them? The same glass that Big John Fury pounded his fists against and tried to headbutt. That was so refreshing and awesome. That was ECW. You're damn right, dude. All right. Is this it, Mikey? We got to tell me the truth here. All right. 9:15 a.m. There ever been a Justine Kish situation in the box? I hope not. I know in pro wrestling, I know in the NFL, Tony Saragusa, right? Remember we talked about the time they taped his butt cheeks and then it's gross. I don't think it's happened inside the box, but shout out to Justine Kish. You're ish for that ish. You're a real one. I mean, it's like embarrassing. It's not like we can dunk on her all we want. She's in there fighting and gets choked and is just this most disgusting thing that's ever happened. Okay, Isaac Estrada, Isaac, thank you, bro. Chicago native hair, yeah, bro. The Windy City, Ray Flores, right? Shout out to the Bears. Are there any other champs that leave their hometown as as unenthusiastic as Bilal or Pena? Yeah. I see where you're going with that. I do see where you're going with that. It's a rough time, right? White Sox have the year they did. Ray Flores' Bears are falling apart. Hey, at least Bilal still got that strap, right? Tu Cheng's back at it. If you can make one fight, boxing or MMA, that we never got, what would it be? Mine is Steroid Ken Shamrock versus Tito, open weight, 1997. Wow. They've roided up like WWF version of Shamrock getting in there with him. That's interesting. I mean, there's the traditional ones that we always point, Lennox Lewis, Riddick Bowe, and the heavyweight boxing, and Sugar Ray Leonard, Aaron Pryor. I mean, there's a few that slipped through the cracks or never happened, or if you've been a boxing fan 15 years ago or whatever, or 20 years ago, you'll remember the famous marination. Was that 15 years ago of the Juanma Lopez versus Yuriorkis Gamboa fight that never happened? How about the Yuriorkis Brandon Rios fight that never happened either? But I was talking about this with Dan Raphael in that 20 questions I did with him. That was really good. Shout out to Dan for sitting down with me for 90 minutes and reliving some fun stories of boxing history that he was a part of. But he used to always talk about, of those four kings of featherweights in the early 2000s, Pacquiao, Marquez, Barrera, and Morales, that we saw every possible matchup except Eric Morales versus Juan Manuel Marquez, and it would have been insane. But I do counter with the question I asked Dan in that 20 questions of, why did we never get of that welterweight era from the same time, welterweight / junior middleweight era, Trinidad versus Shane Mosley? Dude, that might be the one. I mean, you can always answer this question by which rematches did we not see that in boxing we really could have benefited from or should have been able to see. Trinidad De La Hoya would be, very high on that list for me. But man, Mosley versus Trinidad is right there with Eric Morales versus Juan Manuel Marquez. It's like, holy shit, we didn't get that one, and we should have. And I wonder if I throw Anderson Silva GSP in there, even though I know the reasons why UFC was hesitant during that time, where they both were at that point, and the respect they had from the fighting community, and that would have been something interesting. It would have been interesting. But I also like a lot of weird fight. I could go down some weird roads too. But thank you, Chu Chings. Mikey, was that the last one? Is that where we're going to close up shop right here? Thank you, folks, for a power 2 hours this week once again. Thank you for hearing me ramble. I was longer than normal to kick off. I hope we got to as many questions as you hoped for. Sometimes you can lose me in turn 4, right? Like Dale Sr., RIP. But I hope I brought it back home. And thank you for the donations and the super chat business and the, you help a guy out, and I love to do this with you. And I hope you all enjoy the fights this weekend. I like weird stuff, but I like it a lot. 90s NBA, 70s vinyl, and I like combat sports a real lot. And this weekend is going to be weird, wild, wacky, regrettable, probably, but hopefully we got a lot to talk about. Check out this channel for Inside the Box with me and Rafe Boogs tomorrow, going deep on all things boxeo. Chris Weidman and I are supposed to dance tomorrow. And Friday night after Tyson versus Paul, not immediately after, but at some point I will check in with you folks. So if you're around, join me live here. We'll have a nice chat. I'll figure out more of the technology that comes with this job as we progress and we grow. But thank you, Mikey, for getting my back. Thank you, wonderful people out there. Hey, keep your head. All right. Because it's winter's coming on for us slowly in the Northeast, although it's going to be like 60 every day. So who am I complaining about? But that seasonal depression thing just gave me a low blow last week in a way I didn't expect and didn't see coming. But, I made the right adjustments. I fought through it. I hope you guys are keeping your head up the same in whatever you are dealing with out there. Loved ones sick, loss of a job, loss of a love, whatever you got going on here. Get back up. And if you're going through hell, keep going, because you're going to get through that. All right. I've seen it happen a few times. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. It's the life we live. Look at Mike Tyson. Look at the roller coaster that guy's been on. But keep doing the right thing. Keep taking care of your loved ones. Keep getting up every morning and be happy that you got another day in front of you. All right. This could be the day that changes your life. It really could be. But you got to believe in yourself. Believe in what's possible. And peanut butter and American cheese is just surprisingly great. On 2 slices of wheat bread. So if you're down, if you're deep in row 8, give it a try. Tell your bro BC how it went for you. But that's it for now. I don't have new artwork to show you. I don't have any record reviews, but I'll be back next week because this is what I do. Until then, thank you for tuning in. It's the BC. Oh, and if you're like feeding off of this, but you didn't subscribe, apparently it really helps us, do cooler things. Check out the maincardminute.com, by the way. Big fan of Luke Nocita, the Long Island one, what he's doing right there. Thank you, Boston Scally, for the cap. We are out of here.